6. All right, we're gonna call it. Okay, we're gonna call this meeting to order. Start with Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, no, you weren't standing.
Councilmember Lane,
Here.
Councilmember Lewis,
I'm here.
Councilmember Whitmer.
Yep.
Vice Mayor DeGolia,
Yes.
and Mayor Holland.
Here. Okay, so we have 2 presentations tonight. So Chief, are you? I think yes.
In Atherton, there's many parts of my job that are my favorite, but the 2 top are hiring new team members and then watching them grow like Casey and then getting to promote them also tonight. So just a couple comments before I get started. So tonight, Casey recognizes a significant milestone, your promotion to the rank of sergeant. This achievement reflects your dedication, professionalism, and the trust this department places in you. Earning this rank is not just about what you have done, but it's about what is expected of you. As sergeants, you are leaders first. Your actions, decisions, and integrity will set the standard for those that you supervise and influence the culture of this organization. Leadership at this level requires accountability, fairness, and the courage to do what is right, especially when it is difficult. Never forget your greatest responsibilities to your people, to the department, and to this great community of Atherton. Congratulations on this well-deserved promotion.
Thank you.
Oath, so I state your name.
I, Kenneth McDonald,
Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of California, against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of California, and I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. Do you understand these responsibilities and accept?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey.
Come up and pin the badge on. Couple comments real quick. A lot of people probably think that this profession is crazy, which it is in a lot of different ways. We go to work wearing a bulletproof vest and a gun every day, and we have our families that are there seeing us out. It's impossible to do this job without the support of the family, especially as you rise in the ranks. So Brittany, I want to thank you for your support and the support that you're going to give along with you kids as well. So if you want to go ahead and pin that badge on. Members, any comments, or Casey, any comments?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Did she stick
Oh.
you? Did he get stuck?
You got stuck.
And you've prepared a speech, I
plug.
assume, along with the detailed one.
Couple
Um,
comments.
No, thank you, council, for this opportunity. Thank you, chief, for this opportunity. And I look forward to continue my service with the town of Atherton.
Great. We look forward to meeting. Congratulations.
Okay, and second presentation is from HIP Housing. Do we have someone here from?
I wonder.
I was like, what?
Maris, you should have the floor. And you can unmute.
Good evening, Mayor Holland, Vice Mayor DeGolia,
City Council members, and residents of Atherton. My name is Maris Ota, and I'm here tonight representing HIP Housing, where I've served on the board for the past 10 years, most recently in the role of president. You may recognize the name HIP Housing because we've been collaborating with Atherton on a home sharing program recently. Or you may recall seeing our information booth at Holbrook Palmer Park during a recent event like National Night Out, Earth Day, or some past bike rodeos. What you may not know is that since 1972, HIP Housing has been helping low-income San Mateo County residents find and maintain affordable housing. And we're listed in all 21 housing elements in San Mateo County, including yours, as a trusted affordable housing partner. Last year, we helped 4,000 individuals and provided housing to over 1,200 low-income households throughout the county. On behalf of HIP Housing, I would like to thank the Honorable Mayor and members of City Council for Atherton for your enduring support of our organization. And now for the fun part. We're here tonight to present you with a HIP Housing 2026 calendar. Each year, HIP Housing asks children from across the county in kindergarten through grade 5 to draw a picture of home and tell us what it means to them. This year, we had over 120 calendar entries, and from these entries, we selected 14 winners, one for each month, and then one for the front cover and one for our annual appeal materials. So the image behind me by Madeline Wu is one of our winners this year. And as you can see, it says, I heart home. And it's one of my favorites because it really depicts a home that is surrounded by a lot of hearts and a lot of love. We hope that this calendar serves as a reminder all year of how important housing is to everyone in our community, especially our children. And for more information about HIP Housing's programs or for our calendar contest, you can find more at our website, which is hiphousing.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the council on any matters that's not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of city council. Need to read this whole spiel. State law prohibits the council from acting on items not listed on the agenda except by special action of the city council under specified circumstances. Comments or items on the agenda are limited to 3 minutes, and comments for items not on the agenda is limited to 1.
Is there anyone in the room? No, there's none.
Okay, moving on to the disclosure of ex parte communications. I'll kick it off. All of us have received public comment about the inclusionary housing ordinance from Bob Polito. So, does anyone have anything on that to?
I went to the meeting last night and there were some comments about overall housing element. Respond really. Brittany was there, keeping things in check.
Cool. Okay, so moving on to departmental written reports. Does anyone? Comments? Okay, we're flying through this. So now we will talk about the consent agenda. Before we do comments or pull anything, I wanted to allow George to share any of the information that came out of our one-on-one sessions that you feel to be.
Certainly. There was some corrections to the January 14th minutes. We changed the narrative to make it more detailed about what actually transpired at the meeting. Copy of those. I also received comments on the Interwest Safe Built Building and Life Safety Services approval of that agreement, just some general Q&A there. And just wanted to note, at the back of the room, there's probably more staff from Safe Built and Interwest than there is from the town. They're all along the back and hiding in the back. And then I received some comments regarding the approval of the agreement for TJKM, item number 7, and it was clarified that the study of options and alternatives is going to be broad, and none of those options and alternatives limit the town one weighing of any streets or any of the selected options that might come out of that. That's the discretion of the council. And lastly, I received comments on item number 8 clarified that the town's participation is required to meet SB 1383 requirements, that the compost bin that we have at the park provides about a third of our required 300 tons.
Cool. Anyone pull any items from the consent calendar or ask any questions?
On item 7, which is a consent item to approve a consultant to provide information on parking areas around the town center here, as well as the Dinkerspiel Lane pedestrian pathway. I think it's extremely important that we get local members of the community around the town center to share their thoughts on what is proposed and what we will discuss. And I just want to make sure that we're going to be reaching out to everyone in this immediate community.
Make sure that happens.
Okay. Wait, is there any public comment on the consent?
Move to accept the consent calendar with the comments and changes noted.
Second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on. So now we are going to be opening our public hearing, which is, go ahead, Brittany, we're going to start with a staff report.
Good evening, council members. Brittany Bendix, town planner. I'm here to present to you tonight on the proposed inclusionary housing ordinance. We have slides to help me guide us through this, so just 1 second while those are brought up. So our recommendation tonight is that you introduce and conduct a first reading to add chapter 17.57, which would be our inclusionary housing chapter in the Atherton Municipal Code. Just some background, we initiated looking at the inclusionary housing studies provided by BAE last January in 2025. This introduced the Nexus studies from BAE, but then in further discussion, we decided to put the ordinance on hold pending the certification of the housing element HCD. So then in May 2025, we received certification of our housing element, and then we had another joint study session with the Planning Commission and City Council in June of 2025. During that meeting, we reviewed the town's 2024 Annual Progress Report, or APR, which looked at how we're performing relative to our regional housing needs allocation requirements, as well as our housing strategies. At that point, the council directed the Planning Commission staff to move forward with an ordinance that would apply to the RM10 and RM20 and 40 sites. So we've been developing an ordinance over the fall, which during the summer and the fall, actually, we saw some state laws become effective that shaped really how we were going to approach some of the aspects of this ordinance. So I've called that out in the staff report. We're looking at Senate Bill 1123, which became effective on vacant single-family lots that would allow up to 10 lot splits. And then Senate Bill 79 was signed into law in October, and that allows up to 120 dwelling units per lot. 120 dwelling units per acre on 7 lots within the town. Next slide, please. So I brought this forward to the Planning Commission as a draft ordinance in December at their meeting. For the most part, they recommended approval of the ordinance. However, they removed the inclusion of the RM10 properties from the program. This was a unanimous recommendation, and stemmed from concerns related to the state density bonus program, which would allow additional units and some relief in standards that we had adopted for the RM10 program as automatic eligibility with any inclusionary program. And then we have there were some concerns related to the townwide development potential for SB 79 and SB 1120. The commission did not have the advantage of having me discuss SB 79 with them more robustly, as well as SB 1123. So the additional information that I presented to you in your staff report was not something that they had in front of them. This includes the acknowledgement that while SB 79 could potentially result in a large number of lower income housing units, that would help with our regional housing needs allocation or RENA requirement, but it doesn't necessarily mean the town can take back the RM10 zoning. The RM10 zoning was done to address the state's requirement that the town adopt or the town pursue affirmatively furthering fair housing by extending beyond single family zones in our zoning ordinance. So we cannot just rely simply on state law to facilitate multifamily housing. The point there was to add multifamily zoning. Then with SB 1123, the situation that I laid out in the staff report addresses some conflicts between the RM10 sites and SB 1123, as I'm hearing more and more from developers who would rather pursue an SB 1123 project, which allows the 10 lot split configuration with buildings up to 30 feet in height at side yards and rear yards of 4 feet. Then pursue the RM10 development with the 40-foot side yard setbacks and rear yard 50-foot, I think, rear yard setbacks that we put in place. They're finding that those setbacks are too strict, and it doesn't necessarily give them enough flexibility to pull them away from 1123 as an option. So the levers that I have there are the fact that if under RM10 development, they were eligible for some concessions, they might be able to relax some of those setbacks to make something a little bit more feasible, as well as the fact that under the multifamily program, you're allowed to have ADUs, whereas on the SB 1123 program, you're currently not. That would be up to the town if we would choose to allow ADUs in the future.
They would fit in the 4-foot setbacks.
They would still have to provide a 4-foot setback. It would generally be the 800 square foot ADU at 16 feet in height, unless the town was gracious, which at this point, my anticipation is that we don't want to allow any. So going beyond 800 seems even more unlikely.
There's a limit of 1.5 acres as the maximum lot size for that, 1123?
Yes.
I mentioned to you right after they had that unanimous recommendation, one of the commissioners wrote to me, said that she didn't realize that she was voting in favor. She thought she was against, that her position would be against. I shared that with you, Ms. Levinson. So I think that that takes a little bit of, I know the unanimous recommendation, but it wasn't unanimous after the meeting. Now, she voted one way, but then she wrote a letter and said, I didn't mean. Wanted to pull that out.
Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. So the way that the ordinance is crafted, and this is more of a high level summary, if we want to go back and look at the exact text, I can pull as well. The applicability and exemptions, the ordinance would apply to projects that have at least 5 dwelling units. So as staff is recommending, that would apply to the RM10 overlay, but I put an asterisk there because I do want to call attention to the fact that the Planning Commission took that out. The RM20 overlay, the RM40 lay Part 40 overlay. And then I extended the breadth of the ordinance so that it would also cover any potential 1123 developments and then SB 79 developments as well. There's language in there that addresses conversions of existing multifamily housing. In my staff report, I noted that that's not really practical at this point because we don't have multifamily housing units yet. But we do want to make sure that we start an ordinance with the components that are generally standard so that we're not caught off guard or future planners, town representatives aren't caught off guard because something that they were expecting to be in the ordinance isn't there when it does become relevant. So then the ordinance specifically does not apply to single-family developments. Initially, a year ago, we were considering applying a fee to single-family developments. Through the study sessions, it became evident that that wasn't the direction the town wanted to head. So I've taken that out of the ordinance entirely, although you will see the remnants of the feasibility and economic analysis in the BAE study that was published in December 2024. The ordinance does not apply to ADUs for the purpose of the state laws, density calculations, inclusionary housing programs. ADUs aren't technically considered a unit. That's why they're accessory dwelling units. The way that that is structured as a state enabling law is that then you don't have to do CEQA or density calculations because of the AD. So I know that that's, if you're not frequently thinking about housing, you might not necessarily read ADUs as separate and distinct, but yes, by their nature, they're not considered a standalone unit counting towards density. And then we have the SB 9 urban lot split developments. There's some nuances there. Generally, the maximum unit count that you can ever get from an SB 9 development is 4 units. You would get 2 units on each lot. So that's under our 5-unit trigger. So I'm just asserting that those aren't part of the ordinance. Next slide, please.
Wait, why is the development of RM overlay asterisk?
Because of the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Just wanted to make sure we understood that they said unanimous when there was a little conflict about that.
I want to be transparent.
Yeah.
Basic requirements would be that the project must include at least 5 dwelling units. And then we've set the percentage at 20%. That's actually what was referenced in the housing element. And for the RM 20 and 40 programs, it's actually required that it be at 20%. So then for the RM 10, 20, and 40 requirements, I've asserted that those would be low or very low income units. Again, that aligns with the language in the housing element. For all other developments, this would include SB 79 projects or SB 1123 projects or anything else that the state might add. I've let those be provided at the moderate income. And the reason I've done that is because of some of the concerns that the town has raised relative to the state's density bonus program. And you are eligible for more of a bonus or more flexibility on standards at the lower affordability levels. So I set that at moderate. If the council wants to adjust that, that's the rationale behind where that level came from.
And why didn't you moderate for RM?
Because in our housing element, we set that at low. And that's also one of the reasons that we've discussed having the RM program is to achieve the RENA requirements.
Say that again?
To achieve the RENA requirement. That's more of we're leaning more on that, especially for the RM 20 and 40.
And the moderate doesn't satisfy the RENA requirements?
It does, but if you have an extremely low requirement, very low, low, and moderate, the more units you have at the lower levels, which are generally harder to provide, you can roll those up. So if we outperform at the extremely low income level or any level below moderate, we can always roll those up into the moderate category. It doesn't work in reverse. So if our program was structured so that we had 120 moderate income units by the end of our housing element cycle, we couldn't move those down into lower tiers, and moving into the next housing element cycle, we could get penalized or falling short and then have to rezone more to compensate for the fact that we didn't meet our targets.
To clarify, you said that the RM20 and the RM40 have to be set at a 20% affordable, and then, so we have some flexibility if we want to change things only for RM10.
Correct.
Okay.
Or outside of the RM program.
Okay.
The city attorney and I have also talked about the importance of highlighting that we don't have a requirement for the extremely low income category. That's not part of our recommendation right now because the town has been performing so well in that area because of the EDU program. When we get to the mid-cycle check-in, if we find that that's falling behind, we might want to pivot to add those into our ordinance. So part of the reason that I'm addressing that now and putting it in the staff report is so that we have some breadcrumbs for staff when we're looking back in a couple of years, trying to remember what the discussion was, and also, you know, preparing those of you who are here on the council at that time, is knowing that that's a really important reason to keep supporting the ADU program.
Question. So the ordinance doesn't require that a developer include extremely low income units in the RM10. But if the developer wanted to get the benefits associated with that, they could elect to do it, right?
Correct.
And the ordinance gives flexibility to the developer with respect to the affordable units to choose whether they're low or very low income. Is that correct?
Yes. So the last point I have on this slide is how we're dealing with fractional units. And I gave you some examples relative to the fees that I'll get to in a moment. That it is likely that we will have a project that requires a fraction of a unit. So it could be 2.6, 1.8, or 2.2. Kind of a better example for comparison. Here I gave 1.4. In this case, where it is less than 1/2, the developer would have to pay the in lieu fee. If it was more than 1/2, they have the option of rounding up and providing that unit as a low income unit or paying the in lieu fee. But both of those requirements or meeting those requirements would still be at the ministerial level. And I'll get to that again in a moment. Next slide. So addressing alternative compliance, there are 2 alternative compliance options that would require council approval. We are required to provide alternatives for if we're allowing rental units part of our program. At this point, I don't want to distinguish between rental and ownership because so much of the direction from HCD was just to allow for more options. And we would want to see some alternative compliances anyway, so that the town had more flexibility in meeting the RENA requirements and addressing some of the AFFH programs in the housing element as well. So the 2 options, the first one is payment of an in lieu fee. We have to have a fee for the fractional amount anyway. And then the second is land dedication. When we're setting the in lieu fee, there were 3 approaches that were studied by BAE. The first one is a nexus basis, which the fee would address the impact of market rate development on affordable housing. That's this extensive analysis that looks at how many jobs or individuals are created from housing production that then trigger a need for additional housing. if we had more of a diversity of land uses, it would be more tied to jobs and housing. But here it's more related to all the jobs surrounding maintenance of the housing, like repairs, gardeners, cooks. Then we have the cost of construction. This fee addresses the specific cost of construction of an affordable unit, and study looked at what that cost might be. Then the third is the point of indifference. And this is specifically the fee to incentivize development of on-site construction. So the point of indifference is the highest fee. You'll see on the chart on the slide, the bottom of the table, the bottom row of the table, for the prototype 3, which would generally be an RM10 development, that fee would be $212 per residential net floor area. And I have some examples of what that looks like on the next slide.
So since you're jumping in and you're taking your numbers directly out of page 204 in the pack, which is table 18 in the study. Numbers in the study are somewhat outrageous. So taking those numbers and putting those in and putting your little star by it, don't, be insulting. Putting the star by it as your recommendation, I don't think is appropriate. I think those numbers are awful too high. The numbers, when I looked at the numbers and compared them with housing costs and things like that, I just don't see those numbers are appropriate. The point of indifference numbers are higher than what it would cost to build it. Now, you could take one example where it's a single, like an ADU, where they were charging, point of indifference, $430 some odd thousand for an ADU. Well, you can get an ADU around here for $350,000. So I think that those numbers are a little bit high. And I just would like to express myself, since we're not going to go over I've got about 1,000 questions. We could go over them if you'd like, but we won't go over the BAE study, but you just took the numbers directly from the BAE study, and it causes me to say, wait a second, okay? Because there's a lot of objections to what's in that study.
So in order to adopt a fee, we actually have to have the study.
Yeah, I got it, but we don't
So
have to
that's what-
recommend it.
Well, the direction from council was that they didn't want to see an in lieu fee option, that the town has gone through this effort to rezone multifamily housing, that there is this conviction that we want to see the units actually built, and that if we have a fee that encourages that, then this would just be a giveaway to developers. And so there was a desire to see a fee that was substantial enough that if it was applied and approved by the council, it would generate enough fees to actually turn around and then go and build the unit. I think in the BAE study, the cost of an affordable unit was approximated around $900,000. The fee as it's set takes into consideration that we actually have to go out and find land. That it's not just building the one standalone unit, that it's the acquisition of a property in a real estate market that's challenging.
I recommend the cost of construction as the number. We'll get to that point later.
Yeah, so
Can
we're
I
gonna,
make one comment about that, Brittany?
Sure.
So just a little bit more context for the cost of construction versus the point of difference. When a developer actually constructs an inclusionary housing unit as part of their development project, they benefit from economies of scales and using today dollars. The point of indifference captures the fact that this money is going into a pot that is going to be set aside for some future housing opportunity, land acquisition, or something to advance the purposes of this ordinance and to develop additional housing. And so, yes, the $154 as an example you see under prototype 1 is more than the $91 for cost of construction. But that also takes into account that it costs more to start a brand new project versus add something that is already in existence. The BAE study was also charged with ensuring that any of these costs, again, whether it's the cost of construction or the point of indifference, there is a nexus so that it would be legally defensible to be able to charge. That doesn't mean that you have to like it or accept it, but I wanted to provide a little bit more context for that.
All right, we are gonna talk, we have to make decisions around what the fee is later, so I think we can
But
save
I
our comments. Here, so if you have a question, go for it, but
I have a question.
Okay.
So the point of indifference is defined as the fee that would incentivize a developer to do a new development. Is that correct?
It's the fee that incentivizes the developer to include the units in their project.
So this is the cost that would incentivize a developer to, rather than build a market unit, build an affordable unit.
Correct.
And is that affordable unit a low income unit or a very low income unit? Because there's obviously a difference.
It would be either low or very low,
Well, there's
or
a different-
moderate in the case of
You're going to get a
outside of the
different
RM.
return for each of those.
So this is modeled on low and very low.
But there's a difference between low and very low.
Yeah, the cost of very low and low in the BAE analysis wasn't actually that substantial. I can go and find that.
Cost of indifference, as I read the BAE report, is the same cost as if you would have built it, but you didn't. So it's the same cost. That's why I said the cost of indifference, because you could either build the house and maybe rent it out and get something back for it, or you pay for the house, but you don't get it. You have to give the money away. That's essentially how they calculated this in the BAE report. That's how they reported it, which is why I don't agree with that number. But plus the numbers were inflated because they took these averages, and we all know that a house or a piece of property, it's just a blank piece of land over here, right off of Fair Oaks in one of these cul-de-sacs, is not the same price as off of Atherton Ave. And so, you know, they had to do something, so they went out to Redfish and they just took the numbers and they averaged them. But that's another reason why I just don't think that cost of indifference star is appropriate. I'll shut up now.
yeah, let's put a pin in this until the comments part of it, because I think
Fork
there
only
are,
smaller.
what?
Or-
Sound like a fork only
A
smaller.
really big pin. Because we're gonna have to talk about what fee we want to set. So we should talk about this, but not yet. This is time for the Brittany
Have a
show
comment.
and questions.
Fine, I
That's
said
what
my
I'm
piece.
saying.
Okay, anyone else have any more questions?
Not yet.
Okay, great.
All right, next slide. So here are some scenarios. They don't include density bonus examples, but it'll show you how the fee would be applied. This is, of course, using the point of indifference. So if you were to go back from the point of indifference, it would be lower, but the methodology would still be similar. So the first scenario is the applicant is providing 10 units on a 1 acre lot and has 20,000 square feet net residential floor area. I just picked a generally easy number to work with, so please don't get hung up on the 20,000 square feet. And the units are provided for sale. 20% requirement is 2 units at low or lower income level. The applicant would have the option to construct the 2 low income units or request that council approve either payment of an in lieu fee that would equal 4.2 million or provide a land dedication of an equal value. In the next scenario, I'm changing the number so that we have a fractional unit that is below 1/2. It's 12 units, 1.2 acres lot, 1.2 acre lot. The floor area is kept the same, as well as they're for sale. This is 20% requirement is 2.4 units at low or lower income level. In this scenario, the applicant can construct 2 low-income units and pay an in lieu fee of $700,000 approximately for the fraction of 0.4. Or they could request council approval to pay an in lieu fee for the same project that would equate at the same 4.2 million, regardless of the fact that the lot size has changed because the net residential floor area has not changed. And then there's also the land dedication option. Then I have an 8-unit example, and this is so I can get above that 0.5 for modeling purposes. This is 20% require results in a 1.6 unit requirement at low or lower income level. Applicant can construct 2 low income units or 1 low income unit and pay $1.6 million. That would be ministerial. Or they can request council approval to pay an in lieu fee of 4.2 million or do a land dedication.
So it's very hard to understand the meaning of a lot of this stuff, but in this assumption, you're using a dollar value for the in lieu fee.
Of 212. So
Okay.
this is the same prototype
Okay,
that was
so
in
that
your
was
staff
the
report.
point of
Yeah.
indifference fee.
Yes.
And is what this is saying is that the cost difference to the developer to build the affordable unit versus the market unit is $2.1 million a unit. So
Yes.
essentially they're going to be discounting the value of that unit by $2.1 million.
Because it's actually tied to the net floor area, I wouldn't look at it as a per unit charge.
Well, why not? There's 2 units and it's costing them $4.2 million. That looks like a per unit charge.
Because when we get into the fractional values, it doesn't play out the same way.
So what's the purpose? So I feel like a lot of the stuff is negotiating ourselves into a corner because the state law is so bad. All right. If you came out with, if you start with the fact that 1123 and 79 are just poorly thought out, unreasonable and inappropriate laws, that's where I start. Then we start negotiating ourselves into a corner because of that. So what is when you're talking about, are we truly incentivizing affordable units with this model? Or are we coming up with ways to sort of negotiate ourselves out of 79 and 123? And every time we start to do that, they come up with a new law that's worse. So tell me, I'm missing the point of why we're actually approaching this particular scenario.
So if the desirability or if the preference is to have units constructed, having a higher fee, which the analysis, the highest nexus for analysis that's available is this point of indifference calculation that VA has done. If you have to have an in lieu fee option, setting it at the highest will potentially discourage people from not building the units.
So your density will stay lower.
Not necessarily.
Go bigger.
It
Bigger,
pushes
it
them
would
to
go
build
bigger.
the affordable unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Yes,
trying to
yeah.
get people to build. One of the things that we have to keep in mind here as we're looking at these is that where are these RM10 sites? One's on Bay Road, one's on Oakwood. Those aren't high-end areas. And so, back to my comment on, which I won't make again, on the the fee, we got to keep in mind where it is. And, if we have more, of course, once we set it and we decide to identify new areas, that's fine, but my complaint. We just have to think about where they are. Think this through easily as opposed to just looking at the numbers and say, yeah, let's get it done with.
And then Elizabeth.
Well, I did, just a basic question, because it seems like the council has some heartburn about the BAE analysis. And I guess I'm sure they've done analysis for other cities around and have used these same formulas.
Yes, not only are they one of the more prominent firms that does this type of analysis in the Bay Area, when we met with them, when they were at the January study session last year, they were giving feedback from a litigation effort for either the city or the county of Los Angeles on single family home development fees, right? So they are also tested in a court setting as well.
And just to follow up on that, I just think that we all have our own opinions about house and land values in different areas of Atherton. And, you know, these numbers are very fungible in many, many ways. I think what we're trying to get at is a baseline formula that will work for us and be acceptable to HCD for our inclusionary housing and our housing element again, because we're going to come up against it.
Actually, I have two questions. So you said you shouldn't look at these costs, these in lieu fee costs on a per unit basis. Is that because the square footage could change and they're related to the square footage?
Yes. Well, and the density allowance. could
So
change.
if the square footage were, instead of 20,000 square feet on this unit, if it were, I don't know, 18 or 22,000 square feet, then
And
the
the fee would change.
then the fee would change. I understand that. But, okay, but it's very hard to look at this and see that there would be an in lieu fee of $4.2 million for two affordable units and not to look at that as $2.1 million a unit.
I agree.
And the other, and so I'm troubled by the concept. Secondly, when you go into the fractional units, I understand what you're proposing in terms of the less than 0.5, they pay the fee, and if it's more than 0.5, they have an option, they can build an additional unit or they can pay the additional fee. But in those cases, for example, in the second example, the 706,000 is not 0.4 of 2.1. Right? I mean, the two units, the in lieu fee would be $4.2 million.
Right, so that was.
And which translates to 2.1 a unit at this square footage.
4 units is
Say that again?
4 units. That full in for.
No, but
0.4.
but it says there's an additional, well, I guess it's an additional fee of 706,670 for the
Because you're
0.4.
rounding.
But you can't build 0.4 unit.
No, I know, but that they're just calculating an in lieu fee related to the 0.4 because the calculation
To the
of what is 20% comes out to
700.
2.4 units.
Four
So,
goes to zero.
but what I'm saying is, if you take that 0.4 and you multiply it by 2.1, which is what the 4.2 translates into at 20,000 square feet.
But that example is 12 units.
I understand.
Right.
But 0.4 of 2.1 is $840,000, not $706,000. So I don't have any understanding how you come up with that number.
Sure, let me go back to the text in the staff report.
You're looking that up. How does the 0.4 come a number at all when you're rounding it down to 1 as per page 6?
So in the staff report, I spell out the formula a little bit more clearly than I do in this slide.
Tell us what page it's on.
It's page 8 of the staff report. I don't know the entire packet.
Oh,
It's on
be in the
page,
200s.
page 100,
130.
It's right at the top of the page.
138 and 139.
Got it.
It's the
Analysis.
an applicant proposes those two bullets at the bottom. Page 138 that falls into 139.
Right.
It's what we're
It's page 1.
on here.
Consistent with.
I have a question.
Understand it.
So the council approval component would only be if they're requesting, they'll get by right if they do the 2 low income units and then pay that 0.4 or whatever the fraction is, that will get approved. It's only if they want an exception to just pay the in lieu fee that they have to come in front of the council.
Correct.
And is there gonna be, I guess that's us, if we want to decide if someone wanted to round up to do 3 units of affordable housing instead of paying this fee, which I don't know if that ever will happen. Is that something they would have to ask permission for or just never allow, or how to?
The fact that it becomes discretionary at the council approval does give you some leverage. But it also depends on what elements are also involved in the project. Because if the council, well, sorry, I'm just thinking through 5 different state laws right now.
That's exactly the problem.
I
They're
would-
overlapping and they're conflicting and they
So
don't.
I would caveat that it really depends on what the combination of the project aspects are.
Just less coming in front of us is
So-
probably ideal for everyone involved.
So the
That's-
other question I had, that didn't answer me. I don't understand where the 706 comes from. I just read the staff report. It doesn't make sense to me. So this is project scenarios with no density bonus.
Correct.
But if a developer builds the low-income units, which this scenario says they have an option to do, right? And they have the ability to assert density bonus, either exclusion or waivers, correct?
Correct.
So that's going to change the whole scenario.
Not necessarily. In order to be eligible for the density bonus program, you have to construct the units. So that kind of takes the fee situation completely out of play because the density bonus requirement 2 requires that the project round up. So if the density bonus program gives you a certain bonus if you provide 15% of your units at low income, then you have to, and that translates to 1.5 in a 10-unit scenario, then what the density bonus program requires is that you round up to providing 2 units. And so now you're actually providing 20%, not the 15 that maybe you started at when you were looking at the program. So the fee conversation becomes moot because the density program, a density bonus program really works with whole numbers. So you don't have the fractional issue, and then they have to construct them so they're not seeking a waiver or,
So if there's 20% requirement rather than 15% requirement, in this case, it would be under your scenario 2, it would be 2.4 units, so they would need to round up and provide 3 units, is that correct?
it depends on what the, well, yes, if they were doing 20% on a 12-unit project and, we didn't have the IHO, we were just meeting the
So there
density.
wouldn't be any in lieu fee issue, and if they want the density bonus, they
Then they have to
obviously
do
have to
3
build the
units.
affordable units.
Yes.
Sense.
So
That makes sense.
the calculation for the 0.4, get to that 706,000. That's 20,000 square feet times 212, which is the That's the 4.24 million total. Then you divide that by 2.4 units. That's what that represents, and that's 1.766666 per unit. You take 0.4 times 0.4. That's the 706.
Sense. So,
Good job.
so let me just add, let me just,
Elizabeth,
one
and then
quick,
Bill.
yeah. So just to sum up a little bit, that the in lieu fee seems really high, right? And so it incentivizes the developer to build the units rather than have to pay the in lieu. And I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves. Do we want to incentivize developers to build the 20% affordable housing, low and moderately low? Or do we want to try to build a war chest, have them pay this? Yeah, right? So, I mean, am I mistaken in that analysis?
I think
This seems,
that's the question we have to
Right.
answer, right?
okay.
All right, Bill had a question.
So back on page 6 of your presentation, which I asked that question, I didn't get an answer, so I'm asking again, sorry.
Okay.
You said that if there's a fractional number, okay, such as 1.4, it gets rounded down because less than 5 gets rounded down, et cetera. So it would become 1 unit, a 1 unit fee as opposed to a 1.4. So why are we doing the 0.4 times the in lieu fee?
No, the way that it's structured is that the 0.4 is addressed by having to do a fee. So we were saying that it would round up to a whole number if you're using the density bonus program.
That's not what it says here in basic requirements,
That's
fractional thing. It says fractional fees to be provided through fee payment to affordable housing unit, i.e. 1.4 unit requirement equals 1 fee. 1 unit fee, 1 unit, not 1.4, which we're then adding. That's where the other money's coming from. So, we're either rounding or we're not. It says we are, but then we're not. So I guess I'm not
You
sure.
let Brittany.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
The local ordinance isn't rounding. It gives an option to round if the applicant has above 0.5 and would prefer to provide the unit versus paying a fee. They might, because of the economies of scale, find it easier to just construct the unit rather than pay whatever is equivalent to 0.4 units or 0.5 units. I think some of the confusion is coming from, we have the local ordinance and then we have a state program. The state program doesn't care about fractions. It just tells you to round up. It doesn't even tell you to round down if you're below 0.5. It just says round up.
It's an approach.
So,
But okay, thank you.
All right, Rick has a.
okay, so my second question was this slide, which obviously is an important slide. In each of these 3 scenarios, it says applicant can either construct the 2 units or in the third case, 1 unit or pay a fee essentially. And your scenario includes no density bonus. So I assume that means they choose to pay the fee, because if they construct the units, they would have a right to get some density bonus, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It's incredibly important to us to see what the impact would be of that density bonus, because that changes the whole development, including the very carefully crafted design standards that we have developed and that we're quite wedded to. And I think we should remain very wedded to, because we worked really hard on putting those development standards together. And I think we all feel that they're important. Both because they comply with the HCD requirements and they're part of our housing element, and they protect neighbors from multifamily development, which we're trying to minimize the adverse impact of that development on the character of housing in the in the town. So we need to see what the impact would be of those this density bonus if in fact the developer chooses to construct rather than to pay the in lieu.
Great transition to the next slide, which is about construction requirements, which I assume would have something tied to setbacks and stuff as part of that, or am I reading the title of the slide incorrect?
Not necessarily.
Okay,
These
great.
are actually requirements just for really the quality of
Okay,
itself.
then before we switch, any last questions on this?
I did. I just wanted to follow on what Rick was saying because I think you're summarizing your position really well about the developer not having, oh, see, I was going back to that other slide. So that if he doesn't want to pay the in lieu fee of that additional 700,000 and he rounds up, from a 0.4, a fractional unit to a full unit,
I don't think they have the option.
they,
And not in the 0.4, they have the option with
0.6.
the
That's what I-
0.6.
well, if it's, no,
No. So they could have 100% affordable, and then like none of this matters if they're 100.
Well,
They
are
can
you
choose
talking
as
about the
much.
local requirements or are you
Yeah,
talking
I
about
think we're
the
having
state
some trouble because we're
requirements?
mixing the two. So you can round up, you can build more than what is required at any point, regardless of this.
Yeah.
And so then the question is, we're requiring 20% when you hit that fraction.
uh-huh,
If you are less than that, we are not requiring you to do more building than that, pay a fee.
right.
If you're more than that, then you.
But if you don't
Okay.
want to pay the fee, you can just round up and build that additional unit.
Yeah.
Okay, not a fourth of a unit,
don't have to round up,
0.4
you
of a
just build
unit,
You can always
but you,
round up
right.
for
And
developing generally.
so,
Okay.
I just wanted to bring that around. So yeah, the developer has that choice. They're
I
not
see.
forced to pay the in lieu on a fractional, correct?
Right.
So what Elizabeth is saying is in scenario 2 here, they could choose the 20%, if that's the percentage we go with, requires 2.4 units. They could choose to build 3 units.
Yes.
Okay.
Then we charge them nothing because they're exceeding their.
Yeah.
Their,
And I don't think, then addressing your issues about design and protection, setbacks and things, that has to kind of be worked in, to
But that's not,
fit all of that.
that's not the inclusionary housing ordinance. That's the state density bonus. The concessions and the incentives and the waivers and things like that.
Okay,
Where it does tie in is what percentage you set for your inclusionary for the 10 zone. So if you're going to set it at 20%, that's got a certain amount of, if the developer chooses to use it, they can build additional units using that program, whatever income level they choose to build them at.
but we could reduce that 20%.
You could drop it to 15% for the RM 10 zones.
If
we did the
SB
RM.
79, SB 79 properties already have an affordability requirement built into them, but that caps out at 13%.
So that should be a discussion we make.
Wait, the RM
So the-
79 already has built-in 13%, but we can put 20% on
Yes.
RM 79. And we can put percentages on each of these different types, right? RM 10, we could have 15%, and we could have 20% on RM 79 and 20%
40.
on
RM
the
40.
1123.
well, RM 20 and RM 40, we can't touch any. Already established
RM
at
20, RM 40
20%.
is already 20% by
Oh,
law.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
right.
SB 1123 already applies to any multifamily zoned property. So if you impose a 15% inclusionary housing ordinance requirement on your RM 10 properties, that's also going to make them applicable to the 1123 properties because they already qualify.
One more clarification as I understand it. So we're mixing state law and what we've zoned.
Yeah.
This ordinance applies to what we have zoned. We have not zoned SB 79 lots. So
Well, the state did.
the state did that. And so this,
Dang.
the way we're phrasing it, we're saying will apply to that, but it won't apply to it. And then we have to have an inclusionary ordinance to apply to the RM that happens outside of the SB 1120 that happen outside of the RM 10. Whatever. So it's just too many acronyms here, numbers.
SB 1123 and RM 10 overlap.
Yeah.
So there's
But
a
then there
section.
are other lots that could happen that are 11 outside of the RM 10.
Single-family
overlay.
parcels somewhere else in
Right. So
town.
there's like some random ones, and we to decide if those having an inclusionary ordinance would blanket the whole town, right?
But
When we
I
set
think the
our,
difference from what you said, from what I heard, is that the inclusionary ordinance could apply to the SB 79 property.
Yes.
set the RM10 properties on Bay Road and on Oakwood, said they had a 20% inclusionary.
And that's in our housing.
That's what we're
element.
talking about now.
That's
We said that,
currently
so
in
I
our
don't know
housing.
why we're saying, well, we could do it,
20%.
because we already said that we would do it.
And
That's what you're discussing tonight.
We're rediscussing it, what
No,
we
you have to-
discussed
We
a
have to
year
do
and a
the
half
new
ago.
ones.
You have to adopt the ordinance in order to do it.
Okay, but we already had done it once, so I just want to point that out.
So there's three things that we have to decide that George helped me list. We have to decide on what this inclusionary ordinance applies to exactly. We have to decide our percentage of affordability number, and then we have to decide the fee.
we have to decide what.
The fee.
So, because we can set it lower than, or maybe even
But
higher.
if
don't
I
know.
understand it, we could make the percentage of affordable inclusion be different for
Unless it-
different, well, no, but we could also set different, can we set different percentages to different types of property?
Could set SB 79 properties at 20%. You could RM 10 properties. But those RM 10 properties are also overlaid by the SB 11. Those overlap, I'm not sure if that works if you set
So
other
basically,
1123
we can
properties.
set separate percentages for SB 79 than RM 10.
Yes.
But we're locked in on RM 2040, and 1123 just goes with whatever we set for RM 10. Is that correct?
What we have to be careful, there's language in SB 79 that says a city cannot adopt inclusionary requirements that are applicable only to SB 79 units. So let's talk about it in terms of RM 10 and not SB 79 units.
So,
Oh.
so then for SB 1123, because that does not have any affordability requirements tied to that development, is
And
that
there's
correct?
no bonus on that either, right? You just divide, you take 1 acre or 1.5 acres, divide it into 10 parts, and they're required to sell each individual a private home.
Yeah.
So.
No
Not really
affordability
So
required for
That's
that.
added this evening.
But
Must
if
be
we
added.
establish this ordinance, it would apply.
Well, so my question is, could we have this ordinance apply only to 1123, or would it have to go RM10?
But there's no density bonus on 1123. I mean, there's no spiff for affordable unit in 1123. If you have 10 and you come up with 2 of them being affordable, you don't get 12 for 1123. You just get 10 as a max. There's no affordability bonus on that. So, and then the math on that works out early on. A 1.5 acre lot in Atherton is worth more on 1123 than later on, because all of a sudden you get a $3 million house in Atherton rather than a $7 million house. And so 1123 is own whole thing.
That's why I'm asking if we're allowed to create a specific ordinance for that building type.
That I don't know. That's
Mona, is that?
Can't do it for 79.
So interestingly enough, I just pulled up 1123 and I don't see a similar sentence like SB 79. Instead, SB 1123 just says that the housing development project on the lot proposed to be subdivided complies with any local inclusionary housing ordinances adopted by the local agency.
So
So-
we can require some percentage of 1123
To be
units
low.
to be affordable housing.
Right now, there's no requirement. That's the one that has
Or
the
they pay a
4
fee.
Unless we,
So the way the ordinance is structured,
Which
Under-
ordinance, which ordinance?
the inclusionary housing ordinance,
Okay.
the
That
draft
we have in front of us
All right,
right
got it.
now.
Section 175740, basic affordability, affordable housing requirements. There's A, which sets forward the RM10 requirement. Then there's B, which sets forward the RM20 and 40 requirement. And then it says for all other projects located outside the RM10 and RM2040 overlays. And that's intended to capture anything the state throws at us that is technically multifamily housing or generates a project that generates more than 5 units, like a 10 unit lot
And we could
split.
set different percentages for each of those categories?
Yes. And the reason that I phrased it that way is so we didn't find ourselves in trouble for specifically targeting one state law of putting a burden or a constraint of an inclusionary housing requirement just specifically on those projects. Now, when we're looking at the distinction between using SB 1123 or RM10 on some of the sites that are already RM10, I would say that if a site is within the RM10 overlay and an applicant comes in and wants to do SB 1123 instead of RM10, well, technically they're in that overlay, so it still applies to them.
Say that again?
Because the site is already within the RM10 zoning overlay, the requirement applies to them.
The
Density.
inclusionary.
The inclusionary requirement,
It's applicable to RM10.
yes.
But if it's an 1123 lot elsewhere in town,
right,
it would fall under C.
The other
Oh,
I
category.
see.
so and
I
if we
see.
did
Okay.
only C,
See.
then if someone wanted to do on an RM10 lot, it wouldn't apply to that. Okay. Cool. Anyone have any more? Let's keep going.
Okay, so the next slide deals with the actual construction of the unit. The findings is that you want the unit to appear as integrated and indistinguishable from the other market rate units. You don't want to other the low income unit. So that's baked into the requirement. The affordable units also need to be constructed in proportion to the construction of market rate units.
What's that mean?
That is, it's easier to explain in a multi-building project. So if we have a 20% requirement and we have 3 buildings, each with 10 units, that 20% needs to be equitably distributed across all 3 buildings. They can't just put all of the inclusionary units in building 3, build building 1 and 2, come to me and the chief building official and say, hey, look, we've run out of financing. We can't afford building number 3. So we're just going to stick with building number 1 and 2 and cut our construction short. That's the type of scenario that you'll see at the end of an economic crisis or in the midst of one. And so that is trying to control for that.
So what does that mean if they don't have multifamily units and it's a eight unit plan or something like that? What does that mean? Does it mean that the smaller homes have to look like the other ones or the style of that? Or what does that mean?
Well, it should mean that proportionally the lower income units aren't smaller than the market rate units. So you can't necessarily have your smallest unit be the low income unit.
Well, what
Well,
I
there are-
understand what I understand bullet point 1 to be is that basically the construction of the unit that's a market rate unit and the unit that's an affordable unit have to be indistinguishable from each other
Including the
in terms
interiors.
of
Yes.
the layout and
the fixtures.
And
in
the
Use
your-
Carrera
size.
marble
Right.
in the market rate unit. Yeah.
That's fair.
You don't get
That's
to put
important.
Corian.
Very important.
Atherton.
So they just have lower margin on that unit.
Right.
Right.
And that drives
Right,
the point of indifference fee.
right.
Oh, I think I'll pay a fee in lieu.
Uh, so the next point, sorry, point number 3.
Flip side of that for a minute, then.
Sure.
Does that mean that they dumb down the whole unit, all units? I mean, does it actually mean then, okay, fine, that's what you want it? I'm gonna do everything cheap.
It could.
Their discretion, they get.
They have that
Oh.
option.
Yeah. I mean,
They
that's
just have to
every
be
out-
indistinguishable from each other.
Yeah,
Every building in
Which I think is
Atherton
fair.
has that discretion to do cheap
Well,
stuff.
has to be some quality standards.
incentivized cheap.
Theoretically, that's what the market
Yeah.
would, trying to sell.
Yeah,
That's
theoretically,
true.
You're only
That's true.
selling.
They'll have a hard
renting
time
something
selling
For $1,000 and you're.
crappy looking
Another one for
project.
3,000.
At market rate.
Market
You
rate.
think that the
Yeah,
one
they're
would
not going to.
higher, up,
Yeah.
larger.
right.
Oh,
Okay.
we're saying things
Goes
like as
against-
if
it
we
goes
know
against
the future.
laws of-
Right.
Keep-
right.
But this is just all hypothetical in so many ways.
Gone.
So the third point is that we set a term of 55 years for affordability. Early on in the inclusionary housing philosophy that was set at 30 years. Now you can see as high up as 99. 55 is kind of the standard we're seeing in state law. So that feels like the right place to start that discussion.
So what does that
Um,
really mean?
Seems reasonable.
That means
Quality has to.
that the unit
to-
would be deed restricted
Good.
Deed
for
restriction.
55 years.
Okay,
So
got
for a for sale unit,
I got it.
Absolutely.
if you're able to buy your unit at low income, which is gonna go, there's gonna be a calculation based on what the value of a low income
Okay.
can be sold at. You don't get to turn around in 10 years and then sell it at market value.
Got it.
When we
You have to
talked-
wait 55 years.
Talked about deed restriction though, when we were saying you could build a second ADU, but it had to be deed restricted. It's talked that it would be 9 years or 10 years.
Correct.
Now you're making it 55.
It's different. ADUs
Well,
are
that was
different.
different.
Oh,
that
well,
was-
yes and no. Yes and no. Deed restriction is deed restriction, okay?
Sure.
It does impact the value of whatever that unit is or that piece of property, whether it's an apartment building or it's a single-family home with a bunch of ADUs. Passing it on to somebody else when you're trying to sell it and they know that, hey, this is deed restricted, it does impact the sale value.
So
Absolutely.
you're referring to our ADU bonus program where
Yes,
you're
I am.
allowed to have
That's the only other time we talked about it,
Yeah.
deed restriction.
an extra ADU, getting you up to 4 ADUs on properties, I think that are 2 acres or more. A distinction here is you can't separate that ADU and sell it off as a condo. So that property owner has their main residence and 4 ADUs. That program is relatively new. And so we had a lot of freedom and kind of leniency in terms of picking a number. And the town, I think, landed on maybe 10 or 15, somewhere in there. No one's come forward and taken that option up, but it is a program in our housing element that we have available. This is different in the sense that this is an actual for sale unit and it is meant to contribute to the RENA allocation in a way that keeps that unit within the town's housing stock for a certain period of time and justifies its inclusion in the RENA allocation.
Otherwise, we'd have to come up with another affordable unit within our plan
Yes.
to replace that one that was switched off to a non-affordable.
Exactly.
unit.
It
Got
becomes a really big problem. Part of the
Years.
reason that it's been pushed beyond 30 years is because bigger cities that have inclusionary housing programs would have 300 or 400 units all suddenly become market rate and being lost as low income options within a 30-year period. And then it becomes a crisis that the town or the city has to solve for because suddenly they've lost all those units and they have numbers of people displaced.
I have a quick question about it. Would that, what you just said, would that make an argument for maybe staggering some of the deed restrictions? Instead of making everything
No,
a
it's a-
55-year, because at the end of 55 years, maybe everything will go away? I don't,
Well, here locally, I don't think we're going to have the projects
okay,
that they would have in a larger city like that. We might end up,
okay.
makes it easier to track, and they're not going to all
Okay.
develop.
Just don't want to have a housing implosion at some
I
point.
think
50
that's
I mean, I won't be
state.
around by then, but you know, Stacy will
Be
for
on the
sure.
Council in 55. Yes, or more like
Young
it's gonna
blood.
be a rolling 55 years, so. Every-
55 is standard right now,
Yeah.
what you said.
Well,
Okay.
and one
Oh, it's a
thing,
rolling.
Yeah, so.
I like
But
that.
everything
Like
is being built
100
at one
units are
time.
being developed.
Or
like-
20.
there is another alternative that's pretty common in other jurisdictions that have had their inclusion housing ordinance in effect for for decades at this point. And they allow the alternative to be capturing units that are about to expire, buying them and ensuring that they stay at that low income level. So when the town gets there in 55 years or 60 at this rate, we could add in, those that are here could add in that as an alternative to incentivize.
Those of us that are still here in
Take a
55
note.
years,
This
give me a
is
break.
something
Okay.
we need to focus.
All right.
All right, then in terms of the application and review requirements, all applicants would be required to submit an affordable housing plan at the initial application stage. That helps me understand what they're proposing. And then eventually they'll be required to memorialize an affordable housing agreement that specifies the nuances of the 55-year affordability requirement and any other restrictions on the sale.
And I assume we'll have a standard form of affordable housing agreement.
Yes.
Probably won't be developed until we have a developer proposing.
Ideally before. I don't want to wait until we have somebody proposing something, but
Private real way that plays out in the 55 years. So at year 10, a new person buys property. Let's say, it's ready for renovation and they buy 10 homes or whatever. They then are required to maintain the same number of affordable housing units, but they would not necessarily have to designate the same one as that. Is that correct? I mean, they could just say, as long as I keep two, I'm okay. These two are going to be the two that I have, and these were, but now these are? Or do they have to keep the same two?
typically you keep the same unit that you designated early on in the process. It would be complicated. I haven't seen anybody kind of resituate what units are low income, mainly because once the developer builds the project and then sells them off, they're gone and they're not there to kind of negotiate the same way in terms of proportionality, distinguishable.
So the-
They lack, whoever is left at that point is just the single owner of that unit.
Does it require a developer to sell the properties?
No,
Okay,
so if you own a low income unit, there is a process by which you can sell it at a low income value.
No, I'm talking about let's say somebody comes in and says, okay, I'm going to buy this acre property, I'm going to build it out and get the density bonus, and I'm going to rent all the properties out. All right, so it's a corporation that owns the space.
Rental properties not purchased.
Right, they're rental properties, not purchased properties, and then they sell to someone else. So I think we've assumed that each one of these are going to be individually owned. Does the density law apply to an individual developer who's going to sell, or does it also apply to a developer who's going to keep it and rent it?
It would apply to both. We're talking for sale mainly because we're anticipating in the BAE analysis, the rental units didn't perform so well in the residual land value analysis. They didn't see as much of a return on the investment. So the analysis indicates that most developers are gonna choose to do for sale units. Now,
I assume the affordable housing agreement applies to a specific unit and it's recorded.
It is, and it runs with the land, which that's how it ensures that it,
It would run with the land, so
Okay.
if that's true, whether the property ends up being sold or retained by an entity that rents them, if there's a recorded deed
Okay.
for that individual property, then it
Got it.
runs with the property.
Got it. All right.
I would assume that means if someone bought a low-income unit and they then to rent it, they can't turn it into an Airbnb or something like that. There's rules around the
Is that
rental.
true or
that's
not?
correct.
Okay. Right.
Right.
It's reported.
What?
next slide. I have two substantive slides left. Additional requirements. So any fees collected through the inclusionary housing program would be placed into a fund reserved for financing affordable housing projects. Developers may seek administrative relief from the program, but that would be subject to consideration and approval from the city council. And then we also have specific enforcement and appeal protocols that we've included in the ordinance. Next slide.
Questions?
I guess
Why didn't you start with
I'd
that
like to
slide?
see where it is in the ordinance, how these are talked about right here.
Sure.
Have we talked about, excuse me, have we talked about the city manager's approval process? Because some of these have to go before the city manager for approval. Some of these have to come to city council for ministerial, that just gives the city manager.
Wait, ministerial.
Ministerial just says it's approved.
Say what?
Ministerial means that it would be at my level.
Oh, at your level.
That's
Okay.
if they're hitting their affordability. They don't have to.
But then there's something city manager to choose and decide on.
Normally administrative processes are approved by the city manager, but here it's written it's the council.
There is a reference to the city manager in terms of the affordable housing agreement. That would either be George designating me to sign off on an agreement, but it also ensures that he's a participant in crafting the agreement. So once the agreement is crafted, it's just a template and we would recycle it.
And with our situation, an employee versus a contractor, that's an important stipulation.
Affordable housing fund.
While you're looking at that, just a comment on the first bullet point here. I mean, there's a substantial amount of work to be done, I assume, to determine how any funds that would go into, this program from the in lieu fee payments, how those would be managed. That's not part of this program, not part of this order, correct?
Correct.
Where would that show up?
In a new,
See,
In new ordinance finance side?
Elizabeth has it.
253, item number 2 at the top of the paragraph. Says the affordable housing agreement shall specify the number, type, location, size, and phasing of all affordable units, provisions for income certification and screening of potential purchasers or renters of units, and resale control mechanisms, including the financing of ongoing administrative and monitoring costs consistent with the approved affordable housing plan and any affordable housing guidelines as determined by the city manager. That's a big job, George.
Just gonna
Don't
go
give him a
knock on
raise.
doors and make
It
sure.
doesn't mean he gets a raise, okay, or a bonus or anything like
I don't
that.
know. She's right.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
So-
We could
Spot
rewrite
checks.
that and say the
There's,
council will
there's a
decide.
range of
We'll get
options
paid.
in managing an affordable housing program.
Yes.
Some jurisdictions have a housing division in-house that does that.
Yeah.
Other jurisdictions will contract out. There is an entity that does this for multiple jurisdictions in San Mateo County. And it's kind of reviewing the income eligibility requirements, monitoring to ensure that somebody that says they're low income is continuing to be low income. All of that is part of that ongoing program. When you only have one project and maybe 2 units to monitor, it is something that could probably be managed by one person. Especially as
clarify.
they're documenting.
We were
Robert,
really
Robert
fully
can do
aware.
it. I think
Okay.
Robert could do it.
We're getting.
Ovadia or Barone the third?
They only got a half hour
We
left.
got it. All right, so I think we had a next slide was very dense looking. All of
The findings, yes. The
Findings.
next slide is the finding slide.
I don't have it. Oh,
This is a reminder to you of all the places that the inclusionary housing program is referenced and the concept of generating low income units is necessary in our housing elements. We have it as goal 3.730. This is getting to faculty and student housing at the moderate and very low income housing. Goal 3.760. This is continuing to offer special consideration for those that are handicapped and also low and moderate income homeless persons. Housing element objective 3.761, supporting the conservation and development of affordable housing for citizens of modest means. Policy 3.795, continuing to encourage the production and availability of more affordable housing through the development of new accessory dwelling units and private and public school faculty and student housing. So the college is more of the effort there. Goal 3.770, meeting the needs of seniors in light of the pending growth of this population in San Mateo County, calling out seniors specifically because there's a lot of programs that support affordable housing and senior living. 3.772, supporting the conservation and development of affordable housing for seniors with lower incomes. There we have it. And then 3.814 is the actual adoption of an inclusionary zoning ordinance for multifamily development and a housing fee for all new single-family housing construction and additions. We've taken off that last part. That's not part of this effort. And then generating funds to support an affordable ADU rental program and other affordable housing opportunities. It's where you get into kind of funding direction, which slide. Next slide. So our recommendation, one back.
Oh,
Yeah.
you deleted it.
So this is our recommendation that the city council introduce and conduct a first reading to add chapter 17.57 housing ordinance to the C. That concludes my presentation.
I have a question. Chair? So the ordinance that we have in front of us, the draft, in our discussions this evening, did we modify or change any of the things in this ordinance that has been put?
Ask questions.
Okay. No, but
Has it
I
been modified since that or?
no, just what from our discussions
Oh.
tonight.
We haven't done.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so does anyone have any last questions before?
But what was the next slide that came up there?
It
You,
went backwards.
Oh, that was just
Didn't go
background.
backwards. That was with density bumps.
That was a slide that was, should not have been completed, so this is the last slide.
There was a slide that came.
It's something. that's
Secret
not-
slide.
It was meant to be deleted.
Meant to be deleted, doesn't matter.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so public comment. No. Alright.
I'm Brent. Happy to see all of you.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about just RM10 and where the developer is actually building the low-income units, not any of the in lieu of fee scenarios. The state requires for the town to conduct a economic viability report. That's what the BA report is. And it's important to really understand what it says. And so I'm not, all of the in lieu conversation that we just spent an hour on, that's not what I'm talking about. And so what BAE did in their analysis is they looked at a half a dozen different scenarios, development scenarios. Some were rental, some were for sale, some were townhouses, some were apartments. Out of those half a dozen scenarios, only one of those actually was viable. The rest, a developer wouldn't make money in terms of covering the cost of the land. So it's that scenario that is the basis of the approval if the town goes forward on a an inclusionary program. So the scenario is a C.3 in this, and that was 14 townhouses, each with a 2-car garage. And so that is a 40% increase in unit count over the base zoning, over the 10 units, 40%. That's a significant number. If you go through the math in terms of that scenario, and the little table that I sent you tried to do that, laid out what BAE's assumptions are. If you go through that, the FAR on that scenario is 80, which is almost twice what the town's design standard is. So if the council approves this program, we're approving that scenario. And so if in the future a developer comes in and says, I want to build this scenario, the town can't say, oh, by the way, here's our FAR ratio and you're way over, and here's our setback limits and you've got to squeeze into this. That's not what this scenario says, right? And so I do think that there's an issue here in terms of if we okay this program going forward, we have to recognize that the town is going to be required to waive the FAR ratio or the floor area ratio. It's going to be required to waive the the coverage ratio. It's going to be required to waive the setback limits. It's going to be required to waive the height restrictions, right? Because that's the only way they're going to squeeze 14 units onto an acre. So the neighbors are going to feel like this is impacting them. I mean, heard, last night at the meeting last night, the primary concern was over privacy. And so if you got 14 units, 15 feet from your backyard, that's a privacy problem. And so they're going to clearly see that as an issue. They're going to also see it as an issue in terms of potentially impacting the value of their property. And so if you agree that this is a problem, then I urge the council to think about alternates to the current program, because you can't turn down something that's the basis for the approval, is the fundamental problem. Okay. And I do think that there's a couple of alternatives. I could go through them, but I won't unless you want to go through them. But I'd encourage the council and I encourage staff to present to you some alternatives. Thank you.
great. Then we're gonna close public comment. So now it's time for us to comment. So as I said earlier, there's three things that we have to decide. We decide the fee number. Well, we've decided we want to do this. We have to decide what the fee number is, what it applies to. Then we also have to decide the percentage of. So you guys want to start? I mean, it seems like in our housing element, we say we're doing something. So but I would say we were doing something. Great.
So I want to understand, Brittany, on the, so what would force us into, to a height, variance, exception, setback exception, based on what Tom said? What would anything that you, that?
Well, the first thing I want to clear up is the intent of the scenario under table C3. There's two components to these,
Under scenario C3?
Which is here.
which is the one that Mr. Bryant.
Yeah, no,
was-
that's page 229 in the packet.
Right. So that is not the basis for whether or not we have a fee. Sorry, an inclusionary program. That scenario is meant to test what fees are appropriate and would give a RLV or residual land value that the project could still be supported. So the reason that scenario includes a density bonus program is because it's trying to maximize the gains from a developer in order to prove that the inclusionary program could tolerate a fee. So it doesn't mean that we are relying on that scenario to say we can have a program. That table doesn't fundamentally support that decision. It's just there to look at the returns and the RLVs. So we can touch on that more, but I wanted to make that clear.
So what about the exceptions on height and setback?
So those would be given as part of the density bonus program. So if you are providing 20% of your project at certain affordability levels, there's a table in the state's program that awards you both a unit bonus and a specific number of concessions. The number of concessions are based on what your affordability program looks like.
So in fact, it would, there was a potential to give, put in a situation where we'd have to approve a height change and a setback change?
Yes.
Not a waiver. Waiver, he was mentioning waiver, eliminate, it's not, it works unless towns' development standards, they can't build.
All right, so, but it's an exception that's approved because that's how they hit their number, right? Okay, so, can I?
Yeah.
Right, so I need to understand then, what, if any, changes would we make to make that less likely to happen?
The state program is available regardless of whether or not we have an inclusion housing program.
So so what we propose here, make it any more likely than the state direction, or does it make it less likely, or does it hold the same?
It does in the sense that
Does what?
it does make them eligible for the state program if they build the units and they meet the state's eligibility requirements.
So there's what in our proposal or the proposal that better for the intent of the development that we would prefer in town and still comply with state law?
Policy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
what I'm saying
that's
is lower density is better
policy.
for us as a style, proposing style. And providing an ordinance that would guide towards preferred style in town and still comply is what I'm asking for.
Yeah, it depends on your policy objective. If your policy objective in the RM10 zone is to push them to build affordable units, then you're going to impose a housing requirement percent. The minute you do that, they're also, and if they could build those units, they're going to be eligible.
So let me give you some examples of what is you are eligible for a state bonus, the state density bonus, if you are providing 5 units and 10% are at the lower income level, or 5% are at the very low income level. So you would have to drop that number pretty low. And remember that the state's program rounds up in order to avoid any alignment there.
So lower the 5 number lower, is what you're saying, or what? Lowering this percentage lower. I got it.
Before we get too into the density bonus, can you, Brittany, because George explained to me the density bonus program a bit more today, because I think there's confusion around waivers and bonuses, because my understanding is that if you do 20% affordable, say you get 2 sessions, you want to apply that to a setback, that would only apply to one of the setbacks, not a whole structure, and it wouldn't be a waiver where there's no setbacks. It would be an alternative post setback that is agreed upon, right? So there's
a lot
reasonable. Talk us
So
through
if
the
you,
process.
so let's say if you receive 2 concessions and you wanted to spend that on your side yard requirement and your rear yard requirement, you don't just say setbacks is 1, right? Side and rear would count as 2. If you wanted to look at height, the height would count as 1, and then if you did a setback, that would count as the second. If you were making the case, the applicant would have to make the case that the setback was needed for the entire property to reduce it for the entire property line. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if they needed to reduce it from 40 feet to 20 feet, they could do that unilaterally. They would have to indicate how it supports their project. Where it becomes tricky is the town saying, well, no, we don't believe you and we want to fight. Then there's only 3 ways that we can deny them that. And we have to tie it into, we would then have to do the economic analysis to indicate that it doesn't actually reduce their costs, or it doesn't facilitate an affordable housing cost. And then we would also have to look at whether or not there's a public health and safety issue. I have an example where this came up on a potential developer on one of the RM10 sites. They actually wanted to put in 9 driveways at the intersection of Middlefield and Ravenswood to accommodate those 9 units. There's a bike lane on both of those. We have a lot of desire to see pedestrian improvements as well. That applicant came in and had schematics and met with myself, the chief building official, and the director of public works. All of us pushed back on this notion that 9 driveways would be a problem at that location, and that developer has gone away. We now have another potential developer in their place that is starting from a point of, okay, well, let's consolidate those driveways. So there is a discussion that happens at the preliminary level that helps avoid this conflict. But at the end of the day, if that developer was going to move forward, then we would have to put together an argument that, hey, 9 curb cuts at this intersection is a bad idea.
We want to see the number of additional units you get. It's on page 290. Pack density bonus units if based on how much is affordable. It's on page 219 out of 73. It's part of the Bay Area. Guys that did the,
Yeah.
Right.
And the list of categories for these, I can't remember the name, but my brain's getting tired, but it's setbacks, it's floor area ratio, it's sight lines, it's height. I mean, there's like a huge list where even if they get sessions on setback, they still will have to adhere to the rest, floor area ratio, sight line, landscape screening, all that. So there's a lot. They can't just exempt all of them. There's some guardrails to protect sanity.
So I have a question. So there's this huge list.
Yeah.
It seems to me that setbacks and height are our two hot buttons,
Right.
really hot buttons. So could those be eliminated? Oh, don't do that.
It's anything within the zoning code for the,
Anything within the zone. Yeah, that's a bummer, huh?
Yeah,
Because those are the two trigger points.
yeah. The state law doesn't care about trigger points.
I had a question.
Before we get to the three issues that Stacy has clearly by the wind press, I still want to understand what staff's analysis is of what the impact of the density bonus will be. And there was a slide that came up that showed with density bonuses. I don't know why that's not being presented. Is that not your slide?
I haven't, it was just my notes and I haven't been able to verify it at
Okay,
this
but
point.
we need, I'm not gonna vote for this ordinance without understanding what the impact of the density
in
bonus
terms
could be.
of, we had a whole study session where we talked about the density bonus, talked about that table that, remember, we just put out, where it said to 20%, go across the line there, you get additional units.
Yeah,
So at 20%, you can get 50% additional very low income units. Make those units very low, get 50%, which is additional 5 units and unit development.
but I don't, why are we not doing that analysis of what the impact would be?
In terms of development standards,
In terms of likelihood of penciling out.
Because the permutations are extensive, right? It's, well, okay, if you want me to model that, what income levels do you want me to model that?
Well,
And
that's the right question. That makes perfect sense. I mean, we have to choose one of these categories. So if we choose the low income category, you've taken moderate out of the housing ordinance that we're
it's the
considering.
developer's choice, though.
right, so the developer gets to choose amongst 6 different eligibility categories. I mentioned one earlier that was providing, all they have to do is provide 10% at low income. Another one is 5% at very low income. There's a 20% student housing. There's 20% that's either transient housing, senior housing, and then another category that I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a 100% option where they can play within that 100% of at least doing 80% low income and then the remaining 20% is moderate, or they could do 100% at low income because they're meeting that 80% requirement. Every one of those ends up triggering a different number of concessions and a different number of bonus units.
So basically,
We have to do something that's reasonable. The planning commission went into this and they analyzed it, and their concern is that the density bonus is so impactful that we shouldn't include RM10 in this ordinance. That's the planning commission's analysis, right? Am I wrong?
They chose to remove that RM10 zone from the inclusionary housing element, but it does not eliminate the possibility.
No,
of
I
the density.
understand the possibility, but what I understand that the planning commission, I mean, this is our planning commission. We have to take very seriously what they conclude. And what they're telling us that they've concluded is that at some level of assumptions here, which I'm sure is what they have determined to be reasonable, like Tom thought that the only one in the BAE report that was reasonable was on table C3, but the planning commission, I'm not sure all of the scenarios they looked at, but what I understand from the email I've received is that they concluded that the risk of the density bonus impact at some reasonable assumption level is greater than it is a detriment. And therefore, if we include RM10 in this ordinance, that that will be more likely to create a to generate the density bonus. I understand that any developer can obtain all the benefits from a density bonus based on their choice and their independent choice to choose to add affordable housing. I understand that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about what we require, because this ordinance would require them to either build the affordable units or pay an in lieu fee.
So up on your screen there is the density bonus table that Councilmember Whitmer was referring to. It's the expanded version.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
With the different categories that Brittany mentioned. So along the left is the 20, you can find the 20% number
Right,
that the council is considering in the inclusionary housing ordinance.
right.
So as you move to the right, the developer can choose any of those different types of affordability categories. And if they choose, for example, to provide units at the very low income level, 20% means they get a 50% density bonus based on their density. So 10 units, they get an additional 5. They go, if they wanted to do the low income density bonus units, they would get 35%, which is an additional 3.5 units. They round up. So they get 4 units. And you continue to go across depending on what category of affordability they do. That's at the 20%. You could set it at the 15% level. And you're still getting 50% at the very low income, 27.5. It's a little less as you go down the table. And the lower you go, the lower those numbers go. But even if you provide any of those percentages, you still end up with the concessions. And this is the concessions table. So if you provide at least 5 units or 5% of your units at the very low income category, you're going to get 1 concession. So the SB 79 are automatically going to get concessions if they provide that 5% or 7% level.
So if we were to set 15% and they did the lower income, that would mean 1 unit because
Would
it's
mean 1 concession because these are at least.
one setback or the height.
Or one height.
And how much of the setback concession or how much of the height increase they have to give an economic analysis for, is that correct?
Not necessarily. We can't require that they give an additional study. They have to give us some explanation, but then the onus is on us to push back.
Well, let's take height, for example. How does that work? I mean, height, you can go up 10 feet or you can go up 100 feet. Can they go anywhere they want? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's within the realm of reason. And then that is challenged
You're
in,
talking about state laws that don't keep that rule.
well, there's no,
Within
Those
what
guidelines.
reasoning?
Let's let
What- I
Brittany
don't know.
answer you
Well,
guys.
I mean, we have 45 stories being proposed in Menlo Park. We have, I don't know, 10 or 12 stories already existing in Palo Alto.
so
What-
if they were proposing a 45-story building, they would have to justify it by saying that extra 42 stories is necessary in order to pencil that one inclusionary
That's what I
unit.
asked about in terms of the economic analysis. So make it realistic rather than ridiculous.
Right.
If they're talking about, if our limit is 35 feet and they want to go So they choose the concession to be height. They could argue 40 feet, or they could argue 50 feet, or 55
And
feet.
the position the developer would then be in is saying that we need those extra 2 stories to create marketable units or market rate units that will supplement the cost of whatever our affordability component is.
And that market rate units analysis, just with dealing with the height, but I guess it would also apply to a setback because it's the size of the footprint, right? They would have, I mean, it increases square footage of the units, probably, right? I mean, what else does the height do?
I mean, that's what I would assume, or the size of the units.
Roof height.
You mean that,
Ceiling
how high the ceiling is?
Could
That
be, yeah.
they could argue, well, you have to have a 12-foot ceiling to be able to sell an apartment in Atherton?
Or remember, we spent a lot of time kind of sculpting that upper level and
Yes,
dormers, so they could
yes.
use it to eliminate that into a box.
But the law is also pretty clear, the highlighted section there. We're required to grant it unless it's a health and safety issue, environmental problem, historic property contrary to law, or it doesn't result in identifiable or actual cost reductions. But the next sentence says, it also restricts the types of information and reports that a developer is required to provide us in order to obtain that incentive or consent. But the onus that is on us to make the argument that it's not reasonable, and there are no state guidelines on how to do that.
You get to decide how litigious you want to be.
Exactly, and then we would defer to the city attorney in terms of, hey, what is case law telling us right now relative to these conflicts?
Someone was wanting skyscraper to construct 14 thing, like sort of, I mean, so I'm just hearing
But
like,
the issue is going to be, I'm building 10 units and I have I'm building some lower income, depending on what our percentage is. If we say it's 15%, they get 10%, so they get to build one additional unit, if I understand it. Now I'm building 11 units, and their argument's going to be, I need these units to be 2,500 square feet each. But with our height constraint and our setbacks, I can only make them 1,800 square feet each. And to be able to sell it, they have to be 2,500 square feet. Is that the argument? Is that where that goes?
Generally, I mean, I want to also put out there that Atherton is unique, right? The land value itself is quite a bit. And so developers want to market units that are going to sell at top dollar, and they want the project to read like it belongs in Atherton, because that's what sells.
The ones that are here all the time, but there are other ones that are not.
Public comments closed, yeah.
Yeah.
file for Bob. And okay,
So, and also, remember that all of the RM10 sites are also SB 11. So if they don't have an inclusionary requirement on them, it might push that developer into an 1120 development, which might be more favorable to them, which has a 4-foot side yard setback and a 35-foot height, and a 4-foot rear yard setback and a 30.
That's what 1123 is, a 35-foot height?
That's our.
It's whatever the base zoning is.
I see.
and the setback.
But the
rear and the
setback is
side
state law.
4 feet.
Yeah.
Right.
And no affordability requirements, and they're all single family. They'll actually take away from our RM10 family opportunities. Build a SB 1120 on an RM10 lot, then we have fewer multifamily opportunities for the town, which then might force us to read other lots because 10 units of single family homes, multifamily got developed. Crazy.
And I understand we have a
Right.
developer proposing to do
So-
1123 on one of the Bay Road properties.
Yeah, so I'll just start. I think we need to include RM10 for that purpose, because I think everything I'm hearing, the exclusions that they, or the concessions they get have to be realistic. They also have to build affordable units that are the same as their market rate ones, which kind of contains it a little bit. You can't build these giant palaces and then also have them be affordable, I think, developer. But what we don't want is to have, want to try and push things into what we already have established, our RM10. That's what all of us are saying, is we want it to look like RM10. That's what we're hearing. I
Okay,
think.
so you're addressing
saying
what this applies to
this should ap-
of your three
So
items.
to me, yes. So I'm saying, so what it applies to for us, basically, because RM20 and RM40 have to be 20% by state law. And so then the question in front of us is RM10 and the rest of the town where unpredictable things happen. So I think, my perspective, the rest of the town should absolutely be included in it, because I'm basically saying unpredictable state law, crazy. I feel like all have some or some there. And I think it sounds like, to me, having an inclusion zoning ordinance is the best way for us to force our design standards on the entire town as it relates to RM10. Not, there's no affordability requirements for, I don't know why anyone would build a family when you market rate houses with zero tax. So I'm not targeting our 11, but just,
Start talking about.
yeah. Well, I think we can talk about the
Well-
percentages, but I think the first question is what categories do we want this to apply to? And then we could discuss
Let's
the
deal with them
percentage.
one at a time.
Yeah, so let's figure out, do we want to include RM10 and the other rest of the town in it? And then we can, within that guardrail, decide, do we want 20%, 50%, 10%, I don't, whatever.
I'll say something. So I think the existence of this absolutely horrible 1123 bill has a huge impact on us. And we're seeing that right now, where we have a developer that's proposing to do 1123 on one of the Bay Road properties, which is, I think it's slightly less than an acre, but they're going to put 10 units on that property with a 4-foot setback by state law. And there's nothing we can do about that if they choose to do that. And I'm quite sure that Arata is going to sell his property and the buyer is going to do exactly the same thing, because that's what Arata had proposed to us when we were looking at RM10. He wanted to do, he said, I don't have a problem with limiting it to 10 units rather than 20 units an acre, because that's what we were talking about. But he wanted them all to be single family units that he could separately sell, because that make the most money that way. And now 1123 codifies that concept into state law. And I think that's an enormous risk for us, because if you have 10 units on Bay Road or on Oakwood or anywhere else, that really adversely impacts the character of the housing that we have in Atherton. And it seems to me that the only way to address that is to make sure those units are covered by this ordinance that we're talking about. So to do that, I understand from you that we have to include RM10 in this ordinance in order to capture that those 1123 properties, which I think we have to do that. I mean, a developer could still do 1123 and make whatever percentage we choose to be affordable, but they're going to have to assess it more carefully, because it may be cheaper to do the multifamily unit on that lot that we've defined with our well-considered design standard.
I agree with that concept. I'll talk about percentage. Definitely, leaving it out would be a mistake, but we have to make sure that we acceptable and aligned with what.
20, the density bonuses. Lower.
threading a needle.
Yeah.
Okay, Bill.
Yeah, overall, we're concerned about the RM10 areas. What it might do to the town. Obviously, there's 120 per acre. Other places within our town, I don't hear anything about that, but me. I think that we need to have a nexus. I think we can get something in place. We had said 20%. I'm going to reduce it to 15. I don't have an issue with that. I do have an issue, the proposal from planning to have the point of no return, so to speak, of the fee. I think that the fee is not based on numbers that are representative of where we're having our RM10 today. And as such, I can't in good faith vote. And if that keeps me voting for this, then I can't move that number down to cost of construction or something in between, but not the number that's put
Yeah,
there.
Bill, can we slice them up into the,
I'm telling you where I stand.
totally,
No,
but
but
can
you're
we like
addressing
do
all three of those
categories
issues.
that we're all
Sure, okay.
taking our,
We should do it. I can change the number to 15. 20 is okay.
but you're saying yes to RM10.
Yes, I am saying
Okay,
that's
great.
that's
So-
what we said originally.
Check one off. So now the question is, we have to decide the fee number. and the
Elizabeth is on the
percentage of
same page?
affordability.
Okay.
So, seems like we should talk about the affordability number, about the, although they kind of,
Talking about 10.
We've been talking about 20%, but the slide, not sure what it is that George put up,
C3.
showed the difference between different percentages. And like,
This bonus here.
Page 28,
This in here?
219.
well, if I,
Wait.
219, page 219.
yeah, no,
One after
219,
that.
but George put up a different
Yeah,
slide.
George's.
220. He went to then 220.
I've got 20.
I'll put the slide back up.
Yeah, it's table B.
It only goes to 15%.
I'll put the slide.
All right, that's good.
I think where we talk about this, there's one thing that we need to all remember is that ours will, there will always be fractions. In order to apply, have the density bonus, you have to round up because you can't have a 0.4 units. It has to be 3. Our law, our regional ordinance allows for less.
Bring that slide down so you can see
It-
what the
it says
title is.
The fraction go
Don't
up
force
or
people to-
less. That's for our regional.
Our ordinance that we're discussing allows for fractions.
I
Say that
mean,
the
our
state law-
Atherton.
Yes.
Okay.
What we're talking about today allows fractions. The state law requires if you numbers 2 have to do 3
Right.
to qualify.
So if you look at this, 20%, if you look at low income rather than very low income, it's 35%. So if it's 10 units, that would be an additional 4 units, which I think is what Tom had said in his. And if you did 15,
No, that's the I think we're getting confused about the bonus and the affordability number. So if you're doing a,
Density bonus. What page is this on?
This isn't in the staff report. This is the expanded table.
so this is the density bonus allows for more than what it, like in an RM10 lot wants to do, say they'll do 2 affordable, that then unlocks them to be able to 10. Right? Or am I
Sorry, can you say that
fundamentally
again?
confused?
I was thinking numbers.
Get then,
20%
right,
inclusionary requirement on a 10-unit lot. How many actual units?
what's their maximum? Or what's the range? Because I understand there's other categories that get, could theoretically build on a 10, RM10 that's a 1 acre lot. So technically, if none of it's affordable, they build 10. We add the inclusionary. They're
Okay,
then doing 2 units of affordable housing, which then triggers the bonus.
so
They
then they
could do
get
12.
if those 2 units are at low income and they're 20%, that means they get a 35% bonus, which means they get 4 units.
14, and that's what is an RM10.
Correct.
And then they would also qualify for 2 concessions.
Let me double check the
achieve that
concession
goal.
sheet.
Yeah,
But
so there was the
yes.
concession slide. That's what,
Now we're at a
Concession
14
slide.
unit building that gets 2 concessions. That,
Correct.
yeah,
So that gets 16.
Yes.
no,
No, it's
concessions
14
are,
units.
They're at 14, but they get 2 concessions.
concessions are relate to
for
the design
our requirements.
standards.
Okay, got it.
And 2 of the 14 are affordable.
Okay, got it.
So I think one of the things that Commissioner Polito has been trying to raise is that there's also something that has been referred to as the double density. I think of it more as additional density. If you want to go even higher, you as the developer, in the low income category, for example, and do 24%, then you are eligible to stack additional units on top of that density bonus, where you would, but then you have to commit more units at the very low income and the moderate level in order to get that extra bonus.
But then you also get more exceptions to be able to do that.
It
Of height and-
depends on how the percentages play out. It might only be that you get one more incentive or concession.
The 24%
Max.
low income.
so, can I ask, okay, so if I understand, if we're looking at 20% versus 15%, let's just use that. 20% would give a 35% density bonus, increased number of units, which on top of 10 units, which is the maximum we allow, that would be 4 units, right? So then they could build 14 units at some size, and they're going to argue they need to be larger, but whatever. If it were 15%, they would get 27.5% density bonus, so they get to build 3 additional units,
Correct.
right? Okay, in terms of concessions, go back to that slide that showed the concessions
No.
right there. If we're at 20%, I'm assuming they get 2 concessions because it's greater than 17%.
Correct.
But if it's 16 or 15%, they'd only get 1 concession.
Correct.
Based on that, because we're really quite worried about the concessions,
Right.
I would prefer to see 15 or 16% because it gives only 1 concession.
Yeah.
And the
And
15%.
granted, it reduces the number of units in the density bonus from 4 to 3, which frankly seems less material to me than going from 2 concessions to 1. I'd much rather limit the concessions.
Now that is assuming that they build them at the low income level.
Well, that's
Build them
assuming
at-
they build them at the low.
Yeah, if they build them very low,
Yeah, but
then it's different.
That's
if
what's
they,
like-
if we're at
15%
15% and they build them very low, yeah, they get 3 concessions. So
15%.
Do you-
Yeah.
It's how they sell.
yeah.
Or rent it.
Um,
Never
yeah.
monitor
Yeah,
it.
it's
So you
what
just-
they would indicate
So
on their.
I
But
guess
wait, hold
there'd
on.
be an argument that we should look at 14% because that would, if they did very low, that would limit it to 2 concessions. Although I have a really hard time believing that anybody's gonna build and sell something at the very low level. I don't remember what
I have a
the
comment.
AMI
Then
percentage
Elizabeth,
is.
Yeah, they
I have
were
a
in
comment.
here and it's
Oh,
really
Elizabeth.
low.
I
Elizabeth's
have a
been-
comment on this because you say that it's how they sell it, it determines the very low or the low. That's after the project is complete.
It's how they're
Okay.
gonna deed.
Okay, so that, makes sense because, they're going to ask for concessions up front.
But we're
during-
gonna deed constrict them
Okay,
up
well,
front.
then there you go.
And
That
they're not
makes
gonna be able
sense.
to sell it for more than X, which is the AMI percentage based on blah, blah, blah.
Thank you. Oh, okay.
Okay. So
I'm okay with that.
are we all feeling good about
14%?
14,
Well,
15?
I'm just raising that as
Okay.
a,
We got a lot of nods when you said that, so
14 is
let's-
fine.
Well, hold on. So the other thing we don't want to do is make it such a bad deal that they go automatically to 1123. So So when you do the math back and forth on those two, would a 14 or 15% make it an attractive development model?
It then gets into how are you setting the fee, right? Because
So, yeah.
if the requirement is 14%, it's 10 units, which SB 1123 is capped at, then the requirement is 1.4. And so it's 1 unit plus the 4/10 ratio of the fee.
Or 2 units they could choose.
But then do they get the,
Well, I have that very same
Yeah.
question. If SB 1123 is capped at 10 units, and they do trigger the density bonus, do they get those additional units?
No, because they're only eligible if they're at a max of 10 units.
But they have to make one of those units low.
Right.
and
So that's what
the
makes it not
exceptions,
penciled.
their exceptions, they still only get one? Even if
Already
they
have
have to
4-foot
build
setback.
two?
1 plus our, have to account for action.
So then they're sitting there going, okay, I get 10 as an ante on 11.3. And if I choose to ordinance, then I get 10, but I'm forced to do low income.
At least
then-
one
then I
and
get
a half,
uh,
or a portion,
They
and
have
then
to
I
do
have
two.
to pay a
You have to do
fee.
2 at low income.
Plus a fee.
One.
Two.
One, okay,
One.
I'm forced to do 1 at low income, and then I get to do how many more?
You
2
can
more?
move up.
Don't get to build anymore. Capped at 10.
Not on 1123.
Correct.
Don't get any bonuses for.
1123, it's just 10. And
They already
if
have
they
all
have
the
the
concessions.
15%.
Well, what I'm
they
saying
get
though
a
is
lot.
if they only get 10 and they're required to do a low income on our ordinance, then they don't do it. They just go straight to 1123, pass go and collect all the money.
But they have to
Unless we
build the
have
low,
this.
one of those units has to be low income.
And then do
Oh,
they have to
if-
pay the
if
in
based
lieu
on
for
our
the
ordinance.
Okay,
fraction?
good.
Do
All right,
this.
super.
If
All right.
we, yeah, if we
Alright.
don't have anything, then
Yeah,
yeah.
you got it. All right. Well,
Then do they have to pay the in lieu fraction?
Yes.
See, that's a
Unless
double whammy.
yeah.
So they're not going to choose to do 1123. They're going to do an RM10.
Developer, but that would be a point.
And they're going to build 11 units or 12 units on the RM10 because they can't add additional units in 1123, but they can in RM10.
I think it's going to come down to floor area. So I don't
See,
1123 is also capped on floor.
Yeah, it's 1,750 square feet,
how much?
Chance.
1,750 square feet
Per unit.
per unit.
All right, so is there consensus? Or are we wanting?
14.
14?
We were
Well-
going with 14, I thought. 14 is good.
14 if you think people are going to build it extremely low.
I mean, they have the right.
No.
So let's go with
Does anyone have
14
a
and be safe.
perspective on that?
I have none.
No, but let's be safe.
I mean, we can always come back and look and if we find that it's an issue. Is that
Can we?
true?
that is true. You have an in lieu fee analysis that has looked at up to 20%. So you can't go beyond 20% if we're in a situation where we're desperate. We'd have to go back and do the fee analysis, but you should be able to increase the percentage under this analysis.
So
Um,
this decision about whether we go 14 or 15 or 20 doesn't have anything to do with BAE. That's just our decision based on our assessment. And after we see the experience, we could change the number. It obviously isn't going to impact anyone that has already put in a development plan, but for
Not
who-
No, so the BAE study was the nexus study that ensured that the number one, the proportion of the inclusionary percentage that is analyzed would be capable of being feasible, and a developer would be able to construct it, and it analyzed the nexus and proportionality. So as Brittany was indicating, you can go up to 20%. You can't go beyond it, but you can reduce it. That benefit, no developer is going to complain for a less amount. So you can do it, but it is directly related to the BAE study. The BAE study just happened to study and analyze percentages up to 20.
so if we set 14 now, at any time we decide we can change that up to 20.
Correct.
And I've got one quick follow-up on that. say we do 14 and we see something, so then folds into the fee is a variable too. So if we set the fee at a low rate, let's say, we incentivize the use of our ordinance. If we find that it doesn't work out the way we want, then we could either adjust the percentage or the rate, right? We could say, you know what, we set the rate too low. Put it to,
I think the Nexus sets the ceiling of the fee. We
It
can't go
does.
higher.
yeah, but I mean, if we lowered it now to incentivize the use of the ordinance, because then the fee, then the penalty is not as high and the cash flow is.
I don't know what you mean by incentivize the use of the ordinance. That they're gonna have to comply with the ordinance. They can't avoid the ordinance.
Saying to encourage
can't-
development of
So can they say that interesting, ordinance is interesting, but I'm going to use 1123 instead?
No.
Okay. All right, well then, got it. All right. Okay, good.
Okay.
Actually working out to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
Secret.
given a bad situation, it's better.
I mean, I think the issue on 14% versus
Yeah.
15 or 16, anything below 17, is whether any developer would actually build to the extremely low number, which I doubt, but
Right.
it's a 1 or 2% difference. So
Yeah.
I think Bill's comment is be more careful.
Right, I agree. Totally agree.
Okay, so. Okay,
Across the
14.
board,
All saying 14, cool.
14% RM10 and all other.
No, it's just 14% RM10, correct?
13.
Let's talk about that. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Okay.
That's fair. So there were 3 categories, am I correct?
Yes.
RM 2040 is automatically 20.
Right.
RM10, you're saying is 14. Then there's all other.
Is that it? So 79 is in a separate category?
79's got its own, but it would apply, it would be
79 is
14.
in the all other?
It would be in the 14. Yeah, I'm sorry.
1120.
What is
No,
all?
Developments outside
ele-
of RM10.
Outside of RM10.
Can happen.
1123 can happen anywhere.
There's standards, but there are lots that
Can
qualify.
Can 1123 only happen on multifamily zone lots?
No, it's the eligibility standards are 1, multifamily lots or lots that have a multifamily designation. And then 2, a single family and vacant lot. There's a few hurdles under vacant. And then what's interesting for Atherton is that there's a density conflict where they have to, there's a maximum of 10 units, but then they also have to provide the state minimum density for that zoning district. In the RM10, because you assigned it a 10 dwelling unit per acre density, it's just 10 units. But actually for the town, the general standard is 20 dwelling units per acre per the state. So if there's a lot that's sized such that it goes above 10 dwelling units per acre, it doesn't meet that minimum 20 dwelling unit per acre requirement and it's not eligible. So really only lots of a certain size are eligible for SB 1123 as the single family home vacant property.
So up to 1.5 acres and not an SB9 split property. So SB9, once you split the property from SB9, it can't be.
Yeah.
So I thought that you and I were talking in our one-on-one and it was something about a half an acre or 3/4 of an acre.
R1B
So
lots could.
when we discussed it, Brittany was mentioning that there was a sweet spot that the developers found where it kind of worked.
Yeah,
What's that mean, a sweet spot?
So when I say they have to provide no more than 10, but they also have to provide a minimum of 20 dwelling units per acre, that sweet spot is around 3/4 of an acre.
So does that mean that a non-multifamily zoned lot that is greater than 3/4 of an acre is not eligible for 1123?
No, it could be eligible for 1123 if it's vacant.
If it's vacant.
Right, so there are stipulations on.
But not, but if it's, what if it's not vacant?
Then there are restrictions on how long the house has to be, well, it couldn't have been rented at a restricted income level. And you would have to wait a specific time period. I believe it's 5 years.
Right.
3 to 5 years, post demolition before you could seek the application.
Yeah, 1123 wants to make sure that you don't take rental property out of circulation that's already rental property. But if it's not being used, then it's saying it hasn't been used anyway, so let's go ahead and use that lot.
But but what if someone lives in a house that they own?
Yeah,
That doesn't count.
doesn't.
It has to be unlived in for a period of time.
It's, actually, the word is tenant.
Well, it's,
Right.
it says, vacant zone for single-family development. For the purposes of the paragraph, vacant means having no permanent structure unless the permanent structure is abandoned and uninhabitable. And all of the following types of housing shall not be defined as vacant, which gets into the rental.
So that doesn't mean just not lived in, it means uninhabitable.
No, it
We
doesn't
have a
mean
few of those
It
lots.
then means uninhabited. It could
No,
be-
no, that's a big issue.
The
Now,
bull is what
it-
George said.
There's a huge difference between uninhabited and uninhabitable.
Yeah, but if it hasn't been lived in for the last year, that's considered vacant.
Saying
Well, what if it's
or-
been maintained and we have plenty of,
Code law says uninhabitable.
Oh, uninhabitable. Okay, yeah, that is a big difference. Okay.
So then how can the guy on do that? Because he's living there and they're.
Sell, you can try and sell something for anything you want.
The Ringwood
well,
property
the
is
house that
eligible.
burned down on
because it's
Nora
zoned as
is
multifamily.
is a
Sure,
vacant lot.
So it's a different category.
What'd you say, Britt?
The Ringwood house is eligible because it's zoned as multifamily.
Yeah.
What we're talking about relative to vacant and the potential for being able to demolish something and split it later is specific to single family lots that I'm telling you are a certain size. The only way it works is if they're less than a quarter of an acre, 3/4 of an acre.
That's happening
I
across
have
the
a
street from me.
Okay, so it looks to me, so we're talking about the third category.
Yeah.
And the third category is all property in Atherton that isn't multifamily or subject to SB 79, which is obviously the vast majority of, say that again?
It would include
Category.
SB 79.
Oh, the third category includes SB 79,
It's also a
okay.
catch-all for any new
So
laws.
can it, SB 79, this is the 7-story building, it's not subject to the density bonus?
It already has its own density requirements within section.
So,
different
so it's
income
not
levels.
subject to the addition, to concessions or exemptions?
Yeah, if they provide those units, I assume the state density law applies.
So but we can say that we don't want to give them excess numbers.
They're already at 13. So.
Yeah,
it would make that much of a.
No, but where I'm going
Yeah.
is 1123, which can apply to any applicable property in Atherton. And forget the RM10 properties, but any other applicable property in Atherton is not subject to the density bonus concessions or exemptions. It's 10 units on that property. So we don't care about the concessions, so we would want to set the percentage at 20%, right? For those properties that, because there's no risk, I don't see a risk. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a risk from the concessions or exemptions issue. We want our design standard to apply wherever we can have them apply. That's what we really care about.
Right.
So the risk is, as the city attorney mentioned, that whatever percentage you set for that category also has to apply to the SB 79 properties.
I understand that.
We don't want to make it 20,
But-
20% more than 120 units.
Well, just wait a minute. So I'm trying to understand what it would apply to. So it would apply clearly to those properties that could be subject to 1123, and there's no adverse impact from a higher percentage for the 1123, but it also would apply to the 7 SB 79 properties.
But SBS 79 has 13% built into its structure, right?
And less three
7,
categories.
10.
But I have a question for the city attorney and or Brittany. On the SB 1123 properties, we're identifying three categories now. RM10, category A, 14%. Category B, 2040, 20%. All other, beyond those two categories is X percentage. Could we set up a fourth category that says SB 1123, X percentage, all other X percent? And that captures SB 79.
Maybe the way to approach it is actually by referring to it as density. So any projects that provide a density greater than 10 dwelling units per acre outside of the RM10 program could have an alternate. Sorry, Mona, you can't tell I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I would much rather do that than have a subcategory that's applicable. Even though 1123 doesn't have that language, my fear is that someone would challenge it based on that. And certainly we don't want to do it for SB 79. As we've been talking tonight, SB 79 does impose affordability requirements. They don't apply to developments of 10 units or less. But again, if the town adopts the inclusionary housing ordinance and the inclusionary housing ordinance imposes greater requirements, 10 or 20%, 14%, we can impose those on the SB 75. But I agree with Brittany that that fourth category should really be based on density as opposed to making it seem like we are addressing certain housing based on the statutes that created them, certain projects that are allowed based on the statutes that created them.
So why wouldn't we go 14% across the board? What would be the disadvantage to that?
Because 79 is 13%. Now
Yeah.
you're raising it by 1%.
Yeah, okay.
Well, okay, but when it's 120 units
So
is
then-
what's been identified, it's more than one
So
unit.
then what if we dropped everything to 13%?
I'd be happy with that.
Right, would we match the standard for 79? Does that impact anything?
Right, but if we make it 14%, I don't understand the issue with, so, okay, if state law for 79 says it's 13% and we set 14%, then
An extra percent on what's already an egregious number.
So
You
what
can't-
would be the
I don't
disadvantage?
care
of
about that.
I know you
board?
don't.
What's that?
What would be the? It still gives the developer the exactly same starter percentage. And it doesn't impact, and then it sort of says, hey, well, SB 79 sets that standard of 30%. We agree with that. All right. Is there anything wrong with that logic, Mona or Brittany or George? What is wrong with?
It's always unintended consequence.
Well, the only difference is in 1123 properties, there's 10 properties, 13% means 1.3. So they pay less of an,
Is the question, is there any problems with reducing the 14% to 13%?
Yes, that's my question.
Legally, I'm not aware of any problems, but as Councilmember DeGolia just mentioned, the point of having our inclusionary housing ordinance was to facilitate the construction of affordable units to offset our RENA obligations. So with a lower number, if the town ends up not being able to construct the necessary numbers, we're going to be back at mid-cycle saying you need to increase it so that you accomplish that.
That's why we've always thought that 20% was the
Yeah.
way to go
It's not about
Or-
the money, okay?
No,
What do you want to do
to incentivize
the
and to meet
neighborhoods
our
of
numbers.
My thing
The
on that
problem
is,
that we faced here
13%.
is
You guys are having excited chat while
the
it's.
problem that
So are they.
we started looking at was the incentives, that the 20% would ultimately give. And we're very afraid that giving two kind of exemptions to developers could really result in some harm being done. if we can't push back on what they're requesting in a reasonable way. And
There's not an exemption risk with 1123.
The
well,
inclusionary housing ordinance would have to be applicable to, we can make it applicable and it would be applicable to all development projects that build 5 or more units, whether that's an SB 79 or an SB 1123 project. Just one more reminder, when the council was discussing the housing element, one of the considerations and the admonishments to the public was that if our programs and policies, one of which is the inclusionary housing ordinance, are not successful the way that we envision, then we're going to be back having those meetings trying to upzone other parcels to make up for the production of units that we thought we were going to be able to make with these. So that was one of the purposes why the BAE study intentionally analyzed it at 20%.
oh, well,
Yeah,
seems to
but SB 79 and
protect
with
us from the,
1123, I'm not so sure that we have to worry. And what's going on now with Menlo College, I don't think that we hear that right now.
Oh, wait, we've agreed to 14%
I'm okay with 14.
for
RM10.
RM10, and we have 20% for RM2040. I don't know why we wouldn't do 20% for everything else. Why wouldn't we?
Because I wouldn't want to see it apply to SB 79.
So can.
But
Lay
SB
out.
79 is just out of control
Well,
already.
okay, so why not, why make it bigger?
Can I ask
Well,
something?
if it can't be down at
Guys.
13%, then I'm not going to vote for it. I'll just make it clear.
Let me ask some clarifying questions to Brittany, because I don't really understand how density bonuses and all of these design standards work towards SB 79, partially because we haven't built our SB 79 design standards. That's probably part of it, but I hear Bill's worried about it's already going to be very dense and very big, and if we use the affordability, it will get bigger and denser. So how, like, what is that?
he's worried, I missed you,
That
he's
they'll
worried
get-
about the Menlo
That
College thing?
SB no, that SB 79 would be eligible for density bonus
Sessions.
sessions to a design standard we have not made. So I'm just, can you talk about how the density bonus and standard sessions work for SB 79? Haven't made the standards. I get that. I'm just like, how
That's
does
a
the,
good question.
right, like, how does that work functionally?
So
Separate
inherent
direction.
in SB 79 are concessions that are granted if you one of the 3 different categories of inclusionary requirements. Just had this up. Yeah, you're required to meet at least one of them.
Was
I
there,
have
was there a
all
reason they
the
chose?
bills up right now. I have to
Was there,
remember.
you
this.
think there was a reason that they chose 13%?
No. I
Okay,
don't
it was
have
dartboard, okay.
a solid justification for that. That number isn't necessarily a magic number in my mind. Like a quarter mile from public transit, which I
Right.
They also, there's a requirement or there's a link to the density bonus program that changes based on the tier and the category of SB 79 you just are inherently. So for us, we're in the tier 1 quarter mile bracket. It says that if a development achieves a minimum density of 90 dwelling units per acre, then and otherwise meets the eligibility requirements of the density bonus program, which I would presume it would at that point. Then it's eligible for additional concessions that you would otherwise get in SB or in the state density bonus program. So it's almost letting you stack the concessions based on what's inherent in SB 79 and then what's also in the state density bonus program, but that's only if you hit that 90 dwelling unit per acre number.
90.
So SB 79, just as a reminder, the maximum density is 120 dwelling units per acre. The minimum is 30 dwelling units per acre. So if you have a project that comes in at 30 dwelling units per acre, then it's not going to be eligible for those additional concessions under the density bonus program that get kicked in at 90 dwelling units per acre. It's only allowed to have the concessions that are embedded in the SB 79 law, which are 2 incentives at 13% lower income, 2 incentives at 10% very low income, or one concession at 7% extremely low. Say the other distinction, just because I caught it, is that SB 79 talks about extremely low income units. The density bonus, the state density bonus program does not.
So with SB 79, what are the setbacks for the building? It's a 7-story building, right? For category 1?
75 feet.
We have
75
to
feet?
permit a height of at least 75 feet.
What does that mean, at least?
Go higher.
We could allow it to go higher if we want.
But we could limit it to 75
Yes.
feet. How exciting. And what does it do with setbacks?
The setbacks have not been determined. That's actually one of the things that we're going to be discussing. We raised that with the community at our workshop last night. We're going to bring it to the planning commission next week, and then we'll be at the city council at your meeting in February.
Wait, does the council set the setbacks for 79?
Yes.
Yeah,
But we have to ensure that whatever our setbacks are, presumably meet don't push the project more than 75 feet, because I don't think you want to go above 75 feet. We also have to make sure that we don't restrict the project to less than 3.5 FAR. So what we've been doing is we've been modeling what that massing looks like. And last night we showed a model that provides 40-foot setbacks and demonstrated that that doesn't work.
That doesn't work?
It doesn't work. It pushes the massing above 75 feet. So we have to relax the setbacks.
Or how many units?
It's not about the units because it's about FAR.
But when it's 75 feet tall, 40 feet.
4-foot setback.
You're gonna see it anyway. There's no screening that can cover it.
Yeah,
anything.
in fact, you might want to go with less setback, so they build 40 feet, 50 feet.
Well, okay, but if that's true, then what's the density bonus concession worry? I mean, there's not a height issue, right? They're 75 feet.
It can be bigger, it's taller than 75.
So if they do a 30 unit, they do a 30 unit and decide
What's
to
this
make
the number
10 of them low income, they get a density bonus for that?
Wait, could you say that again?
If they do a 30 unit and they do 10 of them at low income, do they get a density bonus on that?
No, I'm reading it as it's only eligible if because they're already getting the concessions and they are already get the density of 120 dwelling units per acre. They don't get the benefits of the state density bonus program until they hit 90 dwelling units per
Okay,
acre.
got it.
So at 7 stories, 90 units is 10 a story or something? No, more than that.
Depending on the square footage.
It's 75 feet, not 7 stories.
Say it again?
75 feet.
not
Well, but
7
isn't 75 feet, no?
No.
Well,
On
last
average,
night they
ceiling
said
height's
it
about
was
8 feet.
9 story, or 7 story. This presentation, they said it would be 7 stories.
We're modeling
That's
it
with
where we
8-foot-high
assume that
ceilings?
we have 9 feet
Plus there's no,
ceiling or floor heights. When we did the RM program, we were using 10 feet.
So it would be, if it's 6 stories, that would be 15 units a story to get to the 90 units, which they would need to get density bonus benefits, which I don't know, maybe with that tall of a building, like Eric said, we don't really care.
Well, would they go, if they came in with a 90 plan, says, we want to build 90 units. But the only way you can do that is to adjust your setback and height. We have to do anything with that?
Let me consult the housing.
Well, if she's
Like
looking it up, just remember parking requirements either, by the way.
Might be looking at this differently. Kind of like, you're gonna build 90 units and have a 7-story building in our house. 20% of it better be affordable is kind of my, like, better,
That's right.
you know,
Yeah.
serve some greater purpose of pressure elsewhere is kind of my view. So the concessions at that point are
I agree with that.
whatever.
They're moot.
Yeah, so.
I'm ready.
So the only question, then the follow on to that, Mona might have a feedback on this. How much of a sort of legal target does it create by having a lower standard for the R10 group as opposed to the rest of the community? Does that make it saying, hey, we were picked on or anything like that?
Everything besides RM 10, 20.
Well, we have to have a reasonable basis for why we are having our different standards. And we can have different levels for different densities. So yes, I think we can do that. The key though is to not have it apply to specific types of projects and limit it to densities.
But that makes sense, but if we say we want 14% for RM10 because we want to encourage the RM10 development, and we want 20% because our study says that's acceptable for everything else, and we're not being specific to SB 79 or 1123 units, we're just saying to everything else, that seems rational to me.
Is that defensible, Mona?
I believe so. Again, we're imposing the same standard to any project that's building within that density. And that's really what's important here is that there is an objective standard, but that objective standard is different under different densities.
Saying 14% for RM10.
Else,
Uh-huh.
state law, RM 20, RM 40, everything that's not RM 10 is 20.
Reason for the RM10 lower, it's not really to incentivize development of it. It's a little.
Well,
Didn't
that's
didn't
what
have any
HCD
other-
wants to.
We don't have any affordability requirements without it.
15%.
And I mean,
Then
it's
then we
rational
have
for
smaller
those,
set,
for those,
exclusions.
What
for those
advantage,
RM10 units, we're worried about the concessions.
what advantage
Okay.
do you get of going out that all other, what
We can't
advantage?
go to 20.
The study
20.
says it's-
Study capped it at 20.
Oh, I know, but
Why are we doing it?
why would we
20?
not do 14 every? What
Well,
advantage, what
I
Encourage
think,
more
I think the
affordable.
mayor had made a very good argument. You probably,
no, about the 20, about the
Yes.
property?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
so,
but the other thing on that is that 14% target would still put pressure on them.
but not just as much.
But also lowers, eliminates the question about why did you do it? Property. So, and it doesn't disincentivize any.
I think they are different though. Yeah, I just,
If the state law
They're
says,
different. The RM10,
why did the state law say only?
that's no history.
So then for me,
Yeah.
why?
Well, I'm sure the developers negotiated the percentage
Yeah, so, but why are we not allowing it to go up?
because we want to encourage more affordability.
We want to hit arena numbers
All right,
with the existing.
I can go along with that as long as it doesn't jeopardize.
Agree with that.
I'm sorry, some of the tail end of Councilmember Lane's comments keep getting cut off, so I think you turn away from the mic so I can't
Right.
hear it. But
I just said, I'm okay with being 20% everywhere else, as long as it doesn't do anything to jeopardize our RM10 decision at 14%.
and I just looked it up just to give myself a little bit more comfort. It's a common practice, it's legally defensible, and it's called geographic tiering. And so I think you can have different percentages in different areas based on a reasonable basis for it, which we've already described tonight.
10.
Okay, I'm okay.
Okay, so to summarize,
24.
it sounds
Yeah.
like there's consensus on the percentages. Now we must battle over the structure and what
Correct.
the number is for this fee. Just as a reminder, the ceiling is the one that had the star on it, that is theoretically designed to incentivize the development of the actual construction of building the war chest. So we get to decide if we want to reduce less than I can't remember what the term was of that.
212.
212.
Point of indifference.
Point of indifference. Do we want to do less than the point of indifference?
Which is a really odd label. I mean, of all labels, that's a
This is
really
such a
odd one.
fun term.
Well, Bill has a strong opinion.
Okay,
about this.
Bill, this is your time.
In my comment,
Why
don't-
do you think that's important, Bill? Okay,
well, because I think that the numbers that they came up with were skewed.
So what's the number that's best then?
Well, I thought that either the cost of construction or somewhere in the middle is what I said between the point of indifference and the cost of construction I could go with. I can't go with anything higher than
Right.
that because of the fact that, as I pointed out, they did this Redfin analysis. If people that read the pack or read it again, because I know we all read it back in December or something like
January
that.
of
Yeah, whenever.
2025.
A year ago. And they looked at numbers all over the place. And as I pointed out, you know, the cost of construction for a house over here on the cul-de-sac off of Fair Oaks, it is not the same. And the ground cost is not the same as it is down on Clay, for example. And I think our town, all towns are unique in that manner, but I think our town is even more so unique in that manner because you got the RM2s and the RM1s, okay? And they just, and the costs are different. So I don't agree with that. And that's my 2 cents. So, and I didn't agree with where you're applying the percentage either. So probably I'm going to end up voting against this whole thing. Where I stand.
Okay. So,
My opinion, just really quickly, is that I agree with Bill in a lot of what he said about numbers and the way that the analysis was conducted. And it was conducted over a year ago, and real estate markets changed. Cost of construction has skyrocketed, you know, exponentially. So this is like a stab dark, you know, throwing a dart at a board and trying to come up with some number. So I don't feel any of these numbers, but I mean, we've got to pick a number, right? And so, you know, what's a reasonable number for us? And got to go with it because we have to have a number if we're going to have an ordinance option.
Okay, so
I mean,
about a 30% increase across the board would put it kind of in the middle of what their ranges are, it looks like. Well, I did, that's 1 or 2 of them. But 30% would put the the $91 one at like 118, something like that. So that would put a prototype one, right?
Yeah, I just, Town Planner Brittany Bennix, I want to point out that in prototype 2, the cost of construction fee was actually analyzed to be more than the point of indifference. So
159.
Yeah, right, I didn't
159
do
is
that one. Yeah, you're right.
six.
Well, I'd say look at prototype 3. That's the one that the staff has looked at.
The for
Most real.
sale, because most of it's going to be for sale.
So
Yeah, people
So
like
when I look
errata
at,
don't want to.
when I look at this, I can't look at it and not go to the per unit analysis. The, what they're saying is that the 2 units, the in lieu fee at 212 would be 4.2 million. That's 2.1 million a unit. I understand there's this square footage analysis and all, but I can't help but look at it and think about it on a per unit basis. And is it reasonable to think that a unit that's offered at deed restricted to being offered at low income is a $2 million discount from what that would be at market? That seems like a huge
Right.
amount to me.
So it'd probably be more like something like 1.6.
That seems more reasonable, which I think would be like something like 150.
Right, right. That's, yep, that's the range I was looking at.
Which I think is in the range of what Bill's looking at.
Bill, does that make sense? If you were voting for it, would that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, but that was, the whole chart would have to be done, or just the 150 is all have to be
We're
described?
choosing an in lieu fee.
I just want to come back to my opinion about,
Yeah.
are we wanting to build affordable housing
Yes.
or take a modest in lieu fee?
Yes.
I think we want affordable housing.
Then the in lieu fee has to be high.
I think that's the whole point of their calculation, is that the point of difference is what will incentivize
Move the needle,
actual
yes.
construction of affordable units.
Or you make it too
Ostensibly the
expensive.
goal of this.
If you make it too
whole-
expensive, they'll
Right,
put aside.
that you have to price them out of the fee so that they actually build, so that we actually hit our arena numbers.
Their indifference number is based on the cost to have built it, whatever it was, to have built it instead of not building it. As I pointed out, they had the point of indifference for an ADU at 439, and they claimed that the cost to build one is 439. And so they said, set the fee, the annual, fee would be at 439. So they're saying it would make no difference. You either build it and you maybe get something out of it, or you don't. Give the money. Either way, you're out the money, but you might get something out of it, is try to force you to build it. That's what their analysis was based on.
But this doesn't apply to ADUs.
No, I understand, but it did the same thing for multifamily rentals and because they had
Well,
the,
let's,
Yeah, they had it all.
that's what they did, but let's look at
read it all.
where we are right now, figure out how to move.
I mean, I don't know why I hear your concerns about their math. I'm just more from a policy level, like why wouldn't
High.
a higher number to encourage development? That's the number, what policy wise.
Brittany, how hard is it to lower the number if we decide it's too high? If the pushback comes from the developer, says that's just ridiculous, I'm not even bother with it.
I feel more confident in your ability to lower the number, frankly, than increasing it.
Okay,
I agree.
all right, then,
And I also want to remind you that we've built in a cadence for when these studies have to happen. And so it will be happening every housing cycle. So we're 3 years into this one, 2 or 3 years. We'll be doing another one soon. And this is a great opportunity to make sure we're dissecting the methodology and giving BAE or whatever economic firm does it in the future, clear expectations on what this council wants to see in the analysis.
okay.
So what's the benefit to us of setting this rate at, let's say, 200 rather than 50? What's the relative different impact? The idea is that if it's lower, then the amount of in lieu fee that the developer would have to pay would be less. And therefore, it would more likely motivate a developer to actually build the affordable housing units than to pay the fee. Is that right?
The higher the fee, the more motivated the developer is to construct the units.
And I think Bill's actually proving your point, saying that the construction is less than what we're accounting for, which then would further our goal of having the fee constructions where that people will then do construction. That made sense.
Yeah, that made sense.
So,
Oh,
$500 going once, going twice.
I think from my perspective, I would rather they develop. I don't want us sitting on a big old war chest that then we have to then go find land and develop. I don't really.
Well, I mean, some
we
people
probably give it all
do,
to
some people do.
college, but just like land to.
Something reasonable.
so if a developer comes in and proposes, let's say, this person on Bay Road, and the amount of the in lieu fee is objectionable, and they want to negotiate, their concessions and whatever other density bonus benefits they may have, unless they build.
So they won't pay the fee. They're getting the vote.
Yeah, right. To get a density
But if we
bonus, they
set
have
it-
to meet up all the
They
other
can't
requirements.
negotiate the fee, right? It's done. It's in the code.
Yeah.
There is a provision for
Infeasibility.
feasibility, yeah. It started with an A, trying to remember specifically the section. Basically, that says administrative relief. There we go. If for some reason there is a unique circumstance that makes it absolutely infeasible to do the development or even pay the fee, they can seek administrative relief counsel.
Well, gosh.
So they would come to us and say, I can't afford to build a place and I can't
So-
afford to pay you.
Let's say that we set the fee at the highest rate possible and the economy tanks. And this person is on the hook for something that doesn't pencil anymore. They can come to the council and ask for administrative relief because of the nature of the economic situation.
And will the amount of the in lieu fee encourage that if they like it's too
No.
high? Or that has to do with other things?
I mean, like, wait a minute, Brittany, I mean, like, the economy tanks and they're halfway through the development of their property. They come to us and want some kind of relief.
Yeah, that's a process.
And because they paid us an in,
Let me look at
I
the.
think they pay it at the end of the development.
yeah. they
Well,
would-
let me give a more realistic scenario. So, for example, someone plans on developing and they're well aware that the inclusionary housing ordinance applies. And then while they're in construction, they come across either, hazardous materials or granite rock or something that they didn't anticipate. All of a sudden, the construction cost for the project that they had anticipated skyrockets. It's 10 times the amount that they wanted. And therefore, their ability to the value that they get versus the value of the in lieu fee, for example, that they'd have to pay, or the inclusionary, would be so astronomical that they would suffer economically in a way that they would like lose money off of moving forward with it. So either their option is to completely abandon the project or to come to the council and say, can I have a reduction so that at least I'm breaking even with complying with these requirements, something along those lines. And they'd have to provide substantial evidence satisfactory to you to believe them, right? To agree that you're right, that this would be application of this ordinance would be essentially a taking of your property because once you comply, there's no value left for you. We also included,
Evaluation you do for the construction time limit, penalty, appeal.
Right, yeah.
You talk about.
But what I'm not understanding, so they're under construction and they're building and everything, and they're density bonus units. They just don't have enough money to build those. And then we would require them to pay an in lieu fee. And they're going, no, I don't want to do that. I mean,
No, that's not the scenario that it was necessarily addressing because of that proportionality requirement. The phasing of the construction has to be proportional so that we're always in a situation where they've
Right.
balanced the construction of units. I'm more addressing the economic situation changes before or during the initial parts of construction, and the project is either put on hold or the developer feels like they can no longer move forward with it. COVID-19, 2008, they come back and they ask for help. And the jurisdiction looks at, well, how important was this project?
They can always do that.
Yeah.
Well, and
When
then.
when do they pay it? At the beginning or
Yeah,
at the
that's
end
a-
of the
that's a good
project?
That's what I was looking up. Couldn't remember if they pay it at the issuance of the building permit, which
I-
is.
Yeah, it makes sense that they have to pay it at the building permit time.
I think that there was state law that was adopted recently that said that all development impact fees, this is not a development impact fee, but a developer can elect to postpone it to COO, but we can look into that.
CO.
Wait, so I'm sorry, the in lieu
Certificate
fee is
of
paid at the end of.
Occupancy.
That's
An
what they're-
occupancy?
That's what they're looking at.
Another acronym.
They have to,
Yeah, after
they've
after
sold
the
these
COO
units.
moves in.
Right now, we have it as paid prior to the issuance of any building permit
Okay.
or at a time otherwise specified by the city council through an ordinance or resolution.
Once we have the money, don't give it.
Say it again, at the issuance of the building permit, so it's at
Yes.
the beginning.
So that's assuming that they paid an in lieu fee. to
Well, they
n-
chose to pay.
They chose to pay an in lieu fee instead of building that extra unit.
Or they have a 0.4 that you're right, they
That-
choose to
okay.
pay the in
And
lieu fee.
but then the economy, so
The administrative relief provision has to happen at the first approval of a project. So it's prior to them paying. It's prior to them breaking ground.
okay,
I mean, this is the right time to do it because it informs their,
Right.
so.
So theoretically, if the economy did tank, they could come to us and say, you know what? Now, because of the economy, we can make more,
Want to do anything
Lower-
affordable.
no, we can do lower income. We can do more affordable stuff because that's the only way we're going to sell it.
Say,
So
sorry,
can we have our money back?
We say, well, no,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
invested in another house.
well,
Yeah.
that, I would say
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, right.
To that.
Right, that's what I'm thinking. That would be the one case where I could say, okay, that could be considered.
But essentially in this ordinance, it's establishing that there is a process and that we don't have to set guardrails to what that process is.
Correct.
We
Right.
say, yes, process.
The presumption is that a project must construct or pay the in lieu fee or land dedication. In very rare circumstances, if they want a reduction or waiver, they have to present substantial evidence, and then that comes before the council, and the council makes a decision.
Right. So and that time
So
we'll
Bill,
Mm-hmm.
figure out,
Happy to do.
whoever's on the council the next year will be able to do that.
So what is the fee?
They're negotiating back here, it sounds like.
Little sidebar,
Sidebar.
little sidebar negotiation.
Okay, so.
I propose 200.
Oh, gosh. Oh.
I think that'd be good.
I guess a sidebar works.
Okay, so we have, so do we have consensus
I'll
on
make the
200?
motion.
So, okay, so to recap, because everyone, I feel like everyone is ready to be done with this. So 200 is what it's looking like. Our
That's
number
good.
is, so that means we have achieved the 3 questions.
Not quite. 200 is what we would apply for prototype 3. I need fees for prototypes 1 and 2 as well.
Oh,
Why-
because
what's
we're, in
folded?
case people want to do rentals.
Yes.
Okay, so should we do 150 to the other 2 so that
Say it again.
for prototypes 1 and 2, the point of indifference is 154 and 156, but prototype 2 is where the cost of construction is higher than the,
Yeah,
so it doesn't really matter.
as they say, in some of these cases, prototype 2 didn't pencil out for the developer.
Right.
All right,
So
but we can do 156.
It's easier to use.
you want to do 150? Rick just said he likes round numbers, so in
150.
favor of that,
We'll do
150.
150, there we go.
It's
There we
$4
go.
less
On
than
both?
what the-
Oh, my God.
Oh, I
You
don't
guys
think
are
it
Let's
has
terrible.
go
a
on.
manageable.
Let's move on. What else do you need to know?
Okay, do we do it?
Can't.
150 for both?
Or yes?
Oh, we can't go
1 and
above
2,
it?
because we can't go
Above it.
above
Point of
154 and
indifference.
100.
Got it. Okay, fine.
So,
I like round numbers too.
great, everyone likes round
The
numbers.
math was much
150.
easier.
Keep in mind that prototype 1 is modeled after the college. The RM20 and 40
They're gonna hit
multifamily
their
apartments.
affordable number.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So the point, okay, so what we just said is for the rentals, the in lieu fee is 150, and for the sale, the in.
Yes.
Clear.
Does that work for you?
Basically,
Yep.
the prototype one is if Menlo College decides to start doing lots of market rate rentals, they have to
They're not
pay,
gonna do
which they're
that.
not gonna do,
They're
so
not
this is
gonna
fine. Great,
Very
Well,
good
it
at
doesn't.
that.
we did it.
Okay, production number
Items.
10,
Such a
first
good
reading as
counsel.
modified.
Okay, so does anyone want to make the motion?
I'll move as
The planning
modified.
commissioner.
Yes. I'll move that as modified.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
What did Bill do?
No, I'm not gonna vote for the 20%.
All right, so,
Um,
that's-
Okay, and
But
all,
however,
any-
I vote for everything else, but not for the 20%.
well, but it's all one.
It's all in one motion.
it's
Well,
all one.
then I'm out, like I said.
All right.
so we've got 1 no.
This was a public hearing and an ordinance. Can we do a roll call, please?
Councilmember
We had a
Lane,
waive without reading.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of reading here that most people didn't redo.
Councilmember Lewis,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitmer,
I already said no.
yes, sir. Vice Mayor DeGolia
Yes.
and Mayor.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we table the other items.
Or continuum, right? You continue.
Continue.
Ken's been
items
sitting
10 and
here. I don't
12.
agree with that. Ken's
10 and
been sitting
11.
here the whole time.
I don't be.
And I
Well,
think
it was
that
an
we-
education, although I guess we could do it. Can you do it
I
quickly?
think we
Okay
could
to
do
do
it
it.
fast.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
do it, guys.
It's gonna be
Item
good.
number
Should we do like
2.
a stretch or something? Okay, cool. All right, so now
All
I'm
right,
closing the
first of all-
public hearing.
Yep.
And now it's time to start the regular agenda at 9:15.
If you suspect you could do them quickly, I could summarize them quickly. Through
Yes.
based
You can
on
do it
my
quickly.
Yes.
council notes.
Motivated to do it.
Awesome.
quickly.
So item number 10 is a review of a resolution that came from the Environmental Programs Committee for a pilot project for battery-operated lawn care landscape equipment at the park. Staff reviewed it. You have the staff report that you received. You read that staff report, I assume. You have to provide an opportunity for public comment. But staff's recommendation is that instead of starting a pilot program, direct staff to work with Brightview to come up with the actual cost impacts that might incurred, both personnel power and equipment, to implement battery-operated handheld equipment and the potential for battery-operated lawn mowing equipment, and then return that to the city.
That's, yes.
Questions?
We already are doing the blowers,
Leaf
right?
blowers are already
So the
there, yeah.
blowers are
That's not
already
part of it.
covered.
See all the
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yep.
I think it's a
Okay.
great idea.
We're gonna do public
I
comments.
really
see
think,
it.
I think it's a great idea, but I think that we need more information.
First.
Yeah. But, well,
Getting chippy, guys. Questions only, anyone? Okay, public comment. Let's go, Ken.
Get some kind of endurance award, Ken.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
First of all, I'm not going to ask for any concessions. But, I cut this down from the 25 minutes I promised to 20. I totally disagree and do not support turning it into a staff and Brightview discussion. This was specifically done because 2 years ago, we did the famous sheep versus robot event, had a massive turnout, a lot of excitement. And what we try to do is then set up that discussion that we're just talking about with Brightview and staff and with EPC to follow up on that. It took 6 months to get a 15-minute phone call with Brightview. Amy and I wrote this a few months ago because we felt totally frustrated by not being able to sit at the table and go and discuss what the EPC knows and would like to be looked at. So from my point of view, our recommendation is we sit at the table with Brightview, the staff, and the supplier of most of that equipment with the EPC team and say, all right, what are we trying to do? How are we going to design discussions? And then come back with a follow-up version of what we would do. So I would like to modify the current one to say, put the four of us together in a room, shut the door, and let's come back with a proposal. That would be my view.
Okay. I
Everybody's
don't know.
gone.
I have to ask. And so there's no more public comment. So now it's time
There's
for us
George
to
and Anthony
opine.
online.
Closing the public comment.
Look, Mona will tell me if I don't do it. Do it. Okay, so anyone have any comments?
I think city manager has excellent approach and recommendation to this. I think it's just something that we should look at. Let's need more testing.
Yeah.
I'd say the only thing that I think about is try to do something with the expedition of the turnaround on the review. All right.
So I can, Oh,
Kind of
sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Bill.
Eric went for it.
It's okay.
Okay, great.
handheld equipment, I think we should look into, just like we did for the blowers. I have a robotic machine. There's a cost to establishing it, but then, they would have to be running at night, and they could be picked up and things like that and taken away. I'm not 100% favor of having the robotic lawnmowers out in the park, either at night or during the day when people are using it. But I think that the handheld equipment certainly deserves to be looked at, just as we did with the blowers. And that turned out to be very positive.
I think that the proposal is quite vague in a couple areas. One is it addresses battery operated gardening and landscaping equipment without being specific, and we need specificity. We also need to know what the cost would be, what an estimated cost would be, and staff is unable to provide that. That's something that staff is recommending Brightview provide, which appropriate authority to provide it since they manage our park. And that's where this pilot or test program or whatever it is would be. But we need to know what that would, what would be done and what the estimated cost range would be. So I think we need to get that information or we can make a decision. And we can't have a committee be making that decision. That's got to be staff driven.
The only thing I would add to that is that I want to see some kind of benchmarking. Ideally, if we get anybody, is there another town or anybody that's ever done that? And what was their experience with it?
Okay, my turn. I think I looked at this a little differently. I think their proposal is kind of trying to solve two problems. One of them is the public outreach component, and the other one is our decarbonization goals. So I'll speak to the second one first. The decarbonization of the park operations, I think, should be our goal. I would like to see what that costs and what that process would be, because I think it's expensive and I think we are going to need to be ready to apply for all of the various grants that are available for in San Mateo County. I got a grant for electric that we didn't apply for because we didn't have anything ready to apply for. So I feel like creating a policy that we want to decarbonize our park operations, which will be a costly endeavor to apply for grants as they raise up energy. Like there's a lot that exists. We should be ready to do that. So I think I should get up with that plan so that we can light it. And I think I think what I did not like about the EPC proposal was this pilot idea where we're testing different technologies and trying to use that test of our park as a public outreach component. I understand where you're trying to connect the sheep versus robots component, but I think what technology is being used at the park is probably very different from what we're putting in our own homes. So for residents, I don't know who this is serving besides like a couple Atherton. So I'm more of the view of let's decarbonize our park operations and then let the residents come see how that's feasible and use that as a public education of us setting that goal and then doing outreach around like, look, it's check out our whatever as we're rolling out.
Well said. Absolutely.
Yes.
So based on what Stacy just said, PCE does have quite a bit of money that they've made available for different programs. And I don't know all of the municipalities and what they've received, but I know that there was a big program in San Bruno that PCE supported that converted streetlights. And in Menlo Park, there's a very substantial program that they did to decarbonize. And so I think there's an opportunity to have to be looked into, independent of the kind of grant that we've already received from PCE, to make a grant application to PCE for this in the context of it being an example or a prototype for the rest of the county. And I think that framework of being a prototype that others could then sign up to based on the experience that we have might be interesting to PCE, and we might get it funded.
Acronym that for me.
Peninsula Clean Energy.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right.
Okay, how's that for?
I've got direction. We're gonna
Sweet.
reach out
The
to
last one, right?
Last question.
I don't think, Ken, it's 9:30. So I think we've given direction.
Spoken for 2 minutes. Here's my point. You have an environmental.
You need to come up to the
I
microphone.
come to the mic so that we're
You gotta open
recorded.
up the public comment.
I got something.
Gotta open up the public comment.
Or Ken, you could wait because tomorrow is your EPC meeting and this is on your agenda for tomorrow and you guys discuss.
Before we have the EPC meeting, I want to understand the direction of the council on whether or not the EPC is at the table for these discussions.
No.
I personally think that cannot happen without that because we've investigated for 3 years. We've had talked to all the vendors. We have a view of all this. Every question you guys asked is a right question that has to be determined by that small team as to how we're going to do the details. And if the answer is you'll do that process, but not invite the EPC, that's fine. I should know that now. And I think that's what you just said, right?
That's
So should we just cancel the EPC meeting tomorrow and just not have one? Not have an EPC? What do they do?
Staff will collect.
No,
the
no,
data.
it's not funny.
Staff will
I'm just
collect the
serious.
data, staff will review it with the EPC at a meeting, but meeting with vendors and doing things like that, talking about money and budgeting, been made clear to you a couple times, Ken,
Well, let
is
me-
that staff's requirements, it's
So-
staff's responsibility.
Okay, I'm
All right,
gonna,
thank you. Thank
okay,
you for your
Ken.
support. I appreciate your support. Thanks.
I think the point is that you guys matriculated up an idea that is now guiding policy that we are suggesting that staff will now execute, which is the point of EPC. So
Exactly
this
right.
is a assess
Yes.
that is taken
Exactly right.
from a policy level. So, okay, given direction. Now we're on to the next
Okay.
Jennings Pavilion.
We don't need a motion on that or anything, right?
Now, is that one?
Staff
just
direction.
All right.
So the last item is a review of proposed AV improvements at Jennings Pavilion. We're hoping to use the pavilion more and more. It's gotten some recent infrastructure improvements, some paint, renovation of the bathrooms, flooring, and other type upgrades. So we're looking to upgrade the AV. Currently, it's got an outdated screen and you got to bring your own projector and the microphone systems are wired. And we did add a neat board like what we have here in the closet that we use for study sessions. So you have that for Zoom. That's improved it. We also are working on improving the Wi-Fi technology at the park in general. So hopefully that helps some of that. But we also want to improve the AV inside the pavilion. So we asked a vendor for a all-in sort of a list of what kinds of technology we could put in there, and we divided it into phases. The first phase really looks at just the audio-visual components, still using the neat board, maybe adding a pan-tilt zoom camera, improving speakers and the microphones. That has a cost of $34,657 based on the vendor information. That's within my signature authority. That would be in the first phase. The second phase is once we implement the first phase, we'd evaluate it a little further, whether we need it or not. The second phase would be the screen and the lens. These are the high dollar items, as well as the acoustics improvement within the pavilion. We may or may not need those items depending on how phase one works out. And phase three is the possibility of outdoor speakers, which, as you saw from my pre-agenda email, is probably not something we're going to do, but we just included it in there just as an option. So staff's recommending that the council give direction to at least forward with phase one.
I have a question. Is this the only vendor that has taken a look?
Yes, it's the only vendor we had take a look at it. We just wanted the blue sky pricing for a range, but we would search for 3 bids to comply with our.
So this is just conceptual.
Yeah.
And in going out for a bid, would it be just for phase one?
Yes.
Phase one estimated cost is
About
less than $50,000?
About 35,000.
35,000. To,
Can't we have to?
Nobody's here.
Tumbleweeds going through must comment.
You have to-
Okay.
Okay.
And no public comment.
Right, good.
Okay, so
I second Rick's not.
The only thing the only thing I said to George is a security snapshot of the site before a lot of heavy, expensive equipment goes in would be worthwhile.
well, okay, we have to do a vote for this, or is this just
Yeah,
staff direction? Because
Staff
it's in
direction.
here.
We
We'll
did a
come back with
motion.
the needed budget amendment and all
No,
that.
but just
We made a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
motion
Great.
to adjourn.
All right, hold on,
Wait.
no, I
Oh.
have something. So I gave you my vote on item number 9. Feel strongly about it. However, I feel that it's more important that the council is unaligned. So vote with it.
You gonna change your vote?
Changing your
Yay.
vote.
To a
Thank you.
positive,
Woo,
because I
unanimous.
think that we need to have a solid front like we did on everything. So housing, so,
Councilmember Whitney.
so I'm making that change.
thank you.
Well,
Thank
Great.
you.
May or may not make it to the minutes.
okay, we have council reports.
Very quick. PCE is doing extremely well. There's about $350 million in the bank. We set the continuing discount from PG&E's generation rate at 10%. This was over quite a controversy at the board where some wanted to go down to 5% because in order to do 10%, we have to take funds out of our reserves, but we've got $350 million in reserves. And that motion passed, or at least it passed the executive committee. There's going to be a lot of impact this year because PG&E reduced its generation rates in order to be more competitive with the CCAs, and it got the CPUC to dramatically increase the exit fee, which appears to apply irregardless of the fact that we did our initial offering in 2016. So that has tripled, which is a huge number for PC. It's like $100 million of lost revenue. Finally, PC has decided to move forward with a name change, and it will be called Westlight Energy. And part of the reason that name change was encouraged is the confusion between PCE and PG&E, which I think is quite significant, although the confusion really exists because PG&E sends out the PCE bill.
Right.
And people don't know the difference.
Right.
And for some reason, people didn't really want to focus as much on that, but that seems to be something that's unavoidable. But in general, the quality of the staff at PCE, I'm sure that our staff can confirm this, is absolutely remarkable. I haven't been in an organization that has that quality level of staff. And I mean, these are really technical people. They're starting to figure out how to manage distributed energy resources as a generation source, which is going to really benefit the county. And the other reason for the name change is we do have Los Banos. So we're not just the peninsula.
Is PCE planning on purchasing generation, solar farms, things like that, and building it with some of that reserve?
Not really. I mean, we're expanding our renewable generation with mostly new storage. So we've got quite substantial solar generation, and wind generation in California is 100% spoken for, and we've got a little bit of it. We've bought 200 megawatts of wind energy from New Mexico, and we probably will buy more because wind energy gives us renewable power in the nighttime, and there's no renewable power in the nighttime available because the batteries that store the very substantial solar energy that we generate are basically 4-hour batteries. So by midnight, they're depleted. And to get renewable energy between midnight and 8 a.m. and during parts of the winter are impossible. Just that's not available. The only source of non-fossil fuel energy, the substantial source that's being generated at that time, is nuclear energy, and it's not available. We've tried to buy it, it's not available. It's incredibly cheap, and the people that own it are making a lot of money on it, and it's not available. Valerie doesn't have it, believe me. She has it in 20 years. So anyway, I'd say the organization is doing very well.
And a new acronym to learn, WLE.
Yeah. And it's gonna use the term we, the power of we.
Oh.
Okay.
Which is Westlight
You gotta have a
Energy.
little saying.
Okay, anyone else?
I have one more. I went to the fire board meeting last night, and the highlight of the evening was a little field trip out to their parking lot. We all got up and filed out, and got a tour of their brand new emergency storage supply container. And it's a giant container that one of their firemen officers has spent the last year or so building and fitting up with, at the front end, went back to about 5 or 6 feet of the container. It's nothing but electronics, battery, backup powers. It's got a Starlink for Wi-Fi, and it's just immaculately done. Then you went around the side, and a door opened up. Very cool lock and very secure. And inside is all the provisions, stuff for emergency. So it was really cool. They're going to roll that out, and then cost about $75,000 to $80,000 to do it. And that's the first one, and got plans